check. Populate hashtag reality check for more of that digital discourse and conversation. You can also find me on LinkedIn every now and then, but definitely go to @Ellison Report on Twitter.com, hashtag reality check as well. Also go to the B Note, the BENote.com. That's our companion. That's the reality check, WURD companion, hybrid companion magazine, online magazine, and also newsletter. Check out the latest polling results from our partner, Lincoln Park Strategies Tendency Research, showing the state of the presidential race, and some rather troubling, rather alarming data. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the hour, but definitely go to the BENote.com to see what the state of the presidential race is, and also the state of the black vote in 2020. Some alarming, very alarming data. I just got that from our friends in Washington, D.C. at Lincoln Park Strategies Tendency, and we featured that today at the BENote.com. Joining us now at the top of this 10 o'clock hour is Council Member at Large Kendra Brooks. Go to phlcouncil.com/Kendra Brooks, fairly still new Council Member at Large for Philadelphia, Council Member Kendra Brooks. Also, you can find her on Twitter at Kendra PHL, at Kendra PHL. She joins us by phone here on Reality Check. Phone lines are open in case you have a question for the Councilwoman. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. She joins us by phone here on Reality Check this Thursday morning edition. How are you doing, Council Member?
Good morning. How are you? I am well.
All right, good. Good morning to you. And I really appreciate your time as well, and I'm sure the listeners do. Wanted to get your thoughts on the school district's reopening plan, your thoughts as a council member, also your thoughts as a parent as well. What are your concerns, and should students be going back into buildings that already have environmental toxicity problems, whether it's asbestos in the walls or lead in the water? They were already in bad shape before the pandemic. So I want to get your thoughts on whether or not you think this is a wise move.
So I think we have been thinking about this since school closed in March, right? And we don't have any idea what schools will look like for September. But, as a council member, I have had several conversations with the PFT, as well as the School District of Philadelphia, around the environmental concerns of the building, because that was the work I was doing prior to getting into City Council. I was a part of I actually was the coordinator for Our City, Our Schools Coalition that was leading the Healthy Schools campaign and pushing the school district to make sure while buildings are closed that they're handling asbestos, lead, mold, electrical problems, and all the issues that we had ongoing in our school district. And they assured me that it's a plan in place. I actually have a phone call later on today about the environmental concerns in the building. And part two is, as we think about schools reopening in September, I think the plan that they rolled out is just a starting process on what it's going to look like. There are definitely going to be some readjustments. We need to make sure there's feedback from families about the implementation of the plan, whether it's the cleaning plan that's in place, the scheduling, the A schedule, B schedule, internet access. These are all issues that we have been fighting for years, right? And now it's coming full circle, and it's time for kids to go back to school, because I feel like there's no right or wrong thing, because we have parents on one end saying September starting, jobs are going to be open back up. What am I going to do with my children? On the other end, we have some schools that are in really poor repair, and we have some schools that are not as bad. And with the promise of the district that those things have been resolved over the summer. And I feel like there's no easy solutions. Like, it's we're in times that we have never experienced before. But one thing we do realize, that these times has highlighted the inequities that we already saw happening in schools, and we have to continue to push to make sure that our kids have a quality space to attend, whether it's September or is it January. But I think it was important that the district has a plan in place, regardless of what happens, because numbers could spike between August and September and school doesn't open at all.
Right.
And we'll go strictly to the online plan. But still, even with the pure online plan, we have parents with limited internet access, even with the Comcast Internet Essentials program, if you have multiple children, kids can't get on at the same time.
Have we had, I wonder about that. So, Comcast is the largest broadband provider in the entire country. It's headquartered in Philadelphia. And I wonder, I've had this discussion not just with people in Philly, but nationally, there is this big movement for free universal student broadband K through 12. Not free broadband for everyone, but just a recognition that broadband is now a utility. It's an essential utility. You need it to prop up America's educational infrastructure. And why isn't there free universal K through 12 student broadband in Philadelphia? I mean, we're not asking for free broadband for everyone, just for the students, for the K through 12 students. I'm wondering, has that discussion taken place? I noticed the superintendent for a minute was putting some pressure on the public discussion, putting some public pressure on Comcast to kind of come through with something like that beyond just internet essentials. But I keep hearing a lot of chatter about that. I hear a lot of advocates, activists, major policymakers putting pressure on the FCC to get involved in this. Not that they're confident that they ever will, but what's happening in Philadelphia as far as that discussion?
Like currently, there are conversations moving with not just Comcast, Verizon, and all the companies that lead in broadband in our city to make sure that this access to broadband access is available for all kids. Because although we're talking about public school, there are parochial schools that are going back, as well as charter schools that children will need access to this broadband. So I think collectively, we have to continue to put the pressure on Comcast and all the major cable outlets to make
Verizon,
sure
AT&T, right.
So, and I think the only way we can do it is to have a city, state, and national push on, because it has to happen on all levels to ensure this is something that all children have. Because I know we're talking about Philadelphia, but there's schools in rural counties that had no internet access at all. So they couldn't even do an online strategy for their schools, and teachers were dropping out packets. So I think that this is definitely an issue that we could win, but we have to expand the fight to include people across the state and across the country.
Yeah, real quick, going back to the schools, definitely another number of other issues to unpack while I've got you on here, Councilmember. We're talking with Councilmember Kendra Brooks, Councilmember at large. Go to phlcouncil.com/Kendra Brooks to contact her office if you have a constituent concern. Also, if you have questions for the councilmember right now, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. So are you absolutely confident, however? So I agree with you. There's really no easy answer or easy solution to this, because on one hand, there's a safety issue. You don't want your kids going back to school and potentially getting infected or going into an unsafe environment. But on the other hand, particularly if you're a parent or if you're parents and you have to work, you have to have your young, especially your small age kids, being somewhere, and they have to be also be in the process of learning, and they have to be engaged. So it's a very tough, tricky balance there. But you're confident that the health of kids are safe when they go into a Philadelphia public school building, even if they have to go in 2 or 3 times a week. Are we still confident yet that folks aren't going to be getting, or kids aren't going to be getting infected in these Petri dishes, which they like that even before the pandemic, going back to households and not getting other people infected?
I don't know if confident is the word. I think that I think individual parents are going to have to make that decision based on their current situation, because the alternative is that is people with small kids are going to have to send their kids to child care centers too, which is the same petri dish or breeding ground for the same thing. I think the reality is, we're in tough times. I think that's an individualized conversation that parents need, or decision that parents need to make based on the health of their children, the health of their household, because we also have parents that are essential workers that are in petri dishes as well every day. So, what you're coming home to is all of these things coming together, and what's going to be the aftermath. And, I don't think it's one right answer.
Yeah,
I know as a parent, I had this deep conversation with my children. I have 2 children that are still school age. And, we had a deep conversation, and my kids said that they wanted to go to school. They wanted to go 2 days a week, so I'm willing to try. But the alternative, I know, based on our conversation with Dr. Hyde, is that you can do it by the quarter. So if we try and it comes August 31st, and we go for the first quarter and it's not working for us, or for whatever reason, travel on SEPTA is a whole nother piece of it. The kids getting to school on the bus, that's a whole nother petri dish. If it doesn't work, we can go completely online. But some parents and some families don't have that option. Because online schooling is not easy for all parents, because someone still has to be in the house to watch the kids, and you have to make sure that you can afford even the internet essentials, which I think is like $19.99 a month. Every parent can't afford that additional expense. So there are multiple pieces, and I know the city is working on making sure there's access to internet in other places, but we don't have a clear answer for that as well.
We have a question from
Test. This is a statewide required monthly test of the Emergency Alert System, originating from the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency, Harrisburg. This is only a test.
Libraries, there wasn't enough space in the library, Philadelphia libraries for the kids. So I said there would be more space in the Philadelphia schools buildings because there's more classrooms. So before the pandemic, that's what we were saying. The school need to be used more for a community resource center, where those kids can get their homework done, tutoring, study program, cultural program, different things like that. What is your take on that? And I think if we come together, that'll help curb the violence and the different things, because the kids will have things to do, and we would try to meet them what they want to do. Because you had kids wanting to be in drill teams and different things like that.
Hey, thank you for that, Marisa. It's a good question. Go ahead, council member.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that. My colleague, Councilmember Isaiah Thomas, had kind of touched on this, that the reality is that our kids need access to resources and programming and things to keep things going. But the reality is, before the pandemic, expanding the hours of school is a wonderful idea. Post-pandemic, I think we need to see what it looks like when we bring large groups of kids inside of a building. And it's sad, it sounds very experimental, but in order to get to those things that we wanted prior to the pandemic, we need to, figure out what this new world is going to look like post the pandemic. So, one of the things I ran on is expanded hours for libraries, recreation centers, schools as community hubs. But the reality is we can't do that because we don't know. We don't know what the outcome of bringing large groups of people together in the inside. We don't know how to regulate social distancing in the way with small children. And I think this rolling or this preliminary plan that the school district has rolled out is like the beginning steps to figure out what we can do long term. But I totally agree. Like, we've had a summer with kids with limited activities. And, we see what it looks like. Kids, we need to make sure our children have structure.
No, we do. I did want to ask you, Councilman, we are worried about violence in the city, rising violence in the city. This happened in a number of American cities as well. It got particularly worse, especially since it's July 4th weekend. I want to get your thoughts on what that strategy has to look like. How do we explore, amid pandemic, obviously, so moving in spaces is limited, resources are very limited, but how do we explore some new innovative creative strategies in terms of tackling this violence? Like, for example, just yesterday I had a discussion with the chair of the task force on gun violence for the National Medical Association, who's the chief medical examiner in Washington, D.C. He was like, we need to explore things like, okay, well, there's a big discussion about urban farming. Okay, so how do we scale up and provide like food security to folks who are hungry, and then that becomes a stressor for violence? I mean, are we looking at tackling, are we looking at strategies that are different from strategies that we've relied on for so long, but obviously they're not doing anything?
Yeah, I think that, we're doing a combination of things. I think the root source of this violence, we need to get down to the root source. And you talked about kids, like I talked about kids having, like, idle time, right?
Yeah.
We don't have enough structured programs. Urban gardening is one example, as well as access to programming that I think his name was Marvin actually mentioned in Southwest Philly. We need to invest in those things. And we also need to invest in programs that offer children hope, young adults hope, like job training and, access to housing and all the root causes. We realize that even as an adult, being trapped in a house, unable to move about your normal lifestyle or routine, it's stressful. And we have but this pandemic has kind of created this sense of angst where, we have young people ready to get out. Violence is brewing in households. We see that domestic violence numbers are up. Like, this is the reality of what we're in. And until we address the root causes of those issues, in terms of unemployment, chemical dependency, and access to guns, we're going to continue to see this revolving cycle. I know the city is implementing some programs now to really take it to the street and kind of revamping programs to get out and talk to young people about these particular things, and we need to continue to do that type of work in order to see this gun violence cease. Like, my children and my friends have buried their children. My children have buried friends, and I can't even count. And we're only in July. Like, it's heartbreaking. And we have to continue to find ways to address the root causes. We can't just keep putting Band-Aids on this issue. And a lot of times that's what we have seen, Band-Aids on the issues.
We were talking with Councilmember Kendra Brooks. Go to phlcouncil.com/Kendra Brooks for Philadelphia City Council Member at Large Kendra Brooks. Also at Kendra PHL on social media, on Twitter more specifically. She's joining us here on our Reality Check Thursday edition. We ran out of time, Councilwoman, but this was good. Definitely look forward to having you back. And thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, you do the same. Be safe out there. All right, let's take a break, and then we come back on the other side. We'll be talking with Duran Kalir, professor of law at Cleveland Marshall College of Law. We're going to talk about what's been happening in the Supreme Court lately. We've had a lot of breaking news, a lot of major cases deliberated upon, decided upon out of the Supreme Court. Duran Kalir is a Supreme Court expert, so we're going to talk about some of those cases, what to expect from the Supreme Court, why it's so important in a year like this. Coming up next on Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Start your day with Daybreak. Hosted by Helana. Weekdays 6 a.m. till 7 a.m. Exclusively on Word Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live at wordradio.com and on the Word Radio app. Word Radio Digital Tip of the Week with Stephanie Humphrey.
I'm your Tech Life expert, Stephanie Humphrey, and this is your Word Digital Tip of the Week. Are you one of those folks that doesn't use your smartphone much because the screen is difficult to see? If you're having issues using your phone, you might be able to fix them. Find the settings on your smartphone. It's an icon that usually looks like a gear. Scroll until you see the word accessibility. Tap on that and you'll see a number of different settings you can change. You can make the words on the screen bigger, change the contrast so everything looks a little sharper, or enable spoken content so your phone will actually read the text on the screen to you. Ask someone to help you if you need it, but don't miss out on all the things you can do with your smartphone because you can't see it. Stay tuned to WURD for more tech tips and stay connected with us at wordradio.com.
The Word Digital Tip of the Week is brought to you by Comcast NBC Universal. Listen live at wordradio.com.
Do you need health insurance for your children? The Children's Health Insurance Program, also known as CHIP, provides quality, affordable health insurance for Pennsylvania kids. CHIP ensures that kids can go to the doctor, receive health screenings and vaccines, and get what they need to live a healthy childhood. Families can be covered by CHIP no matter how much money they make. If you've experienced a recent change in employment or income, CHIP may be a good option for your family. Visit chipcoverspakids.com to apply or learn more.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. We're on live. This is our Thursday edition. It's the end of the Reality Check week on Thursdays since we're off on Fridays. And we are on 96.1 FM, 900 AM. Conventional radio inside Philly, beyond Greater Philly, Delaware Valley. We are on wordradio.com, Word TV, also by Word app as well. Continue to go to twitter.com @Ellison Report for more of that digital conversation and discourse, also at hashtag Reality Check. Joining us now is Duran Kalir. He's been on before. He's a clinical professor of law and also heads the appellate practice clinic at the Cleveland Marshall College of Law in Cleveland, Ohio. Duran joins us now to talk about this current term of the U.S. Supreme Court. There's been a lot of major cases coming out of the Supreme Court, so Duran reached out to us, help us unpack some of that. Duran, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Charles? How are you keeping healthy these days?
All right, hanging in there. Yeah, I hope you're keeping healthy as well. Yeah, it's definitely quite a task. It's been quite a year. Good to talk with you. Thanks for your time. I wanted to get your thoughts on the health, or why it's so important, so crucial to watch the health of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Just the other day, she was in the hospital for an infection at Johns Hopkins University Hospital in Baltimore. She has been released as of yesterday, but there was a lot of worry. People were extremely anxious about what was going on with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She's a key Supreme Court justice, but there are a lot of people out there who don't want to see anything bad happen to Ginsburg. Even though she's very much up there in age, they definitely don't want to see anything bad happen to her before this election is through. But I wanted to get your first thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ruth Bader Ginsburg is now 87 years old. She's a petite woman. She's very frail, although she's not only working out, she actually published a book about her workout at the Supreme Court. In January of 2019, she missed her first oral argument in over 30 years in the court. And in August 2019, she was treated for pancreatic cancer. So obviously, everyone is on very high alert when she goes to the hospital. I was on a call yesterday with two senators, Sheldon Whitehouse and Sherrod Brown from my state in Ohio, and they said that the Senate is literally on DEFCON 4 in the case that something would require a Supreme Court nomination. And Sherrod Brown said something very interesting. He said, we keep thinking about November, but the Senate will not adjourn until the new president will sit in January 3rd. And so he said that he expects Mitch McConnell to have the Senate in session every single day from November through January, if that's what it will take to nominate a new Supreme Court justice. And all their words about, last year before election, the Merrick Garland seat that was stolen, and that they shouldn't nominate anyone on the last year of a presiding president, that will disappear like snowflakes in the summer, and they would want to nominate immediately another Supreme Court justice. And now both in the White House, and I'm telling you, it was described as DEFCON 4. The Senate is sitting there just waiting, making sure that the Republicans will not pull a fast one before the election.
No, it's very. Thanks for describing that too. It's very high stakes. We don't necessarily know what will end up with her health, where this all ends up. We know exactly what Senate Republicans want, what the administration wants, why they've hung in there for so long and so tightly with the administration. It's all about stacking that federal court. So do Democrats, do Senate Democrats, they don't have really many tools at their disposal to even block an effort like that.
It's an excellent question, and we asked that at Senator Whitehouse yesterday, and he said, yes, there is no secret, in our tool shed that we waited until now, that we hid until now, that we can now reveal and say, no, you can't nominate a Supreme Court justice. We tried everything, and if they do want it, they have the 53 votes. They've done it twice. It was, bad with Gorsuch, worse with Kavanaugh. It was really a circus there, but he was confirmed. With all the votes of Senators Murkowski and others who said, well, we're going to look at the facts. But when it came down to it, they nominated, and he was confirmed in the narrowest margins in recent history, and that may likely happen again. I just want to remind you and our listeners that Ruth Bader Ginsburg can retire from the Supreme Court voluntarily. She's been she's been suffering major health issues, and we are all assuming that she will be forced out of the court, but she may just want to withdraw. And it was very interesting that 4 years ago, in what looks like to be a very prescient warning, the now Dean of Berkeley Law School, Erwin Chemerinsky, urged Justice Ginsburg. He said, you are an icon. We all love you. You're the best of the best, but please retire now when Barack Obama is in office, because if, God forbid, a Republican president will come up now, who knows what will happen. And she dismissed those calls, and now it may have been, it may have been prescient. I really hope, but let me be very clear, I love, both personally and legally, I love Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I really hope that nothing bad will happen to her. And we're all, all of us in the law schools are really are praying for her health. I'm also Jewish, as you know, and she's of my tribe, and we're very we're very hopeful for her health and her well-being. But those instances are getting more and closer than few and far between than they were, and we're really hoping that if Joe Biden will be elected president, she might be able to step down with dignity and have a proper replacement.
Right. Why are, one kind of get into this is a more sort of philosophical conversation or part of this conversation, Duran, helping people understand why federal judicial picks, nominations, and confirmations, appointments, and Supreme Court picks, why they're so critical. It seems like the larger public still doesn't quite understand that or grasp that. I mean, unless you're a white evangelical or you're a conservative voter, like you understand like why this is important and why you want to insert your people into these very powerful positions. Like, why is the federal judiciary so important?
Thank you. This is an excellent question, and you absolutely hit it on the head in that the conservative voices have long understood the importance of both Supreme Court picks that are now very visible and we all see them. But I want to talk to you and your listeners actually about the federal circuit courts, which are far from the public views and way more important. More than 99% of the law in this country is decided by the federal courts of appeals. In his 8 years in office, Barack Obama nominated only 55 judges to the federal courts of appeal. In his 3 years in office, Trump already nominated over 200, 4 times more than Barack Obama did in 8 years in those 3 years. And now the federal courts of appeals are stacked. Now, those judges are nominated for life, and they're deciding everything. The Supreme Court gets less than 1% of the petitions. That is 1% of thousands of cases that are applying to it every year.
So real quick, rewind on that. So real quick, so federal district courts, they deliberate and they decide 99% of all cases?
Federal circuit courts. The district courts are the courts of first. Yeah, the district courts are courts of first instance, and then you appeal to the federal courts of appeals, and those judges sit in panels of 3, and then they decide 99% of the law in this country. Now, I want to give you an example with the famous case this term, the Supreme Court case of the abortion case. A lot of people think it was a great liberal victory, and I'm very, very happy with the result, where the Supreme Court disqualified a Louisiana law that required abortion clinics to have admission privileges in a hospital and very wide corridors and all kinds of conditions that would literally prevented it from existing. And indeed, if the law would have been approved by the Supreme Court, then Louisiana would be left with only one single abortion clinic. But people don't understand how this case came to the Supreme Court, and that actually shows the power of the circuit courts. So before the case gets to the United States Supreme Court, it goes through the district court and then to the federal courts of appeals. And the federal courts of appeals are now stacked with Trump people who are very, very young. They realize that they are nominated for life, so they're nominating people at their 30s and their 40s. It used to be 50s and 60s, but now they're nominating as judges of courts of appeals very young people who are totally unqualified. And the ABA, the American Bar Association, used to opine on every person that would go to those courts and rank them as unqualified, qualified, highly qualified. And the gentleman agreement was if it was only qualified or unqualified, no one would nominate them. You would only want to nominate the highly qualified. And now repeatedly, Trump has been nominating unqualified people. Some of them have never been to court, Wow. And they are now are the courts of appeals. And so this case arrived at the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which sits in Texas. It sits physically in Louisiana, but includes Texas. And the judges there, although the Supreme Court has 4 years ago disqualified an identical law from Texas, identical in every respect, they literally cut and paste the law. And the Supreme Court said, no, this law cannot stand, and Kennedy wrote the opinion, and Chief Justice was in the dissent. The federal courts of appeals said, yeah, we know that the Supreme Court disqualified it 4 years ago, but now we're Trump nominees. We know that we have Trump majority on the Supreme Court. We have Kavanaugh, we have Gorsuch, and so we will decide on our own that we can now approve this law. The same abortion law that was disqualified 4 years ago by the Supreme Court, we now say it's okay. Now, this is undone. In our judicial system, the Court of Appeals can never overrule the Supreme Court. They can't do it. They're not allowed to do it. It's called stare decisis, and it has to come from the Supreme Court down. Whatever the Supreme Court decides, it comes from the Constitution, Article 3, that says that the judicial power of the United States shall be vested with one Supreme Court and other inferior courts that Congress shall ordain and establish from time to time. So the courts of appeals are inferior courts, and they have to abide by the rules of the Supreme Court. So when this case was lost from the Democratic side, was lost in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, it's the Democrats who went to the Supreme Court and say, look, you guys, they defied your law from 4 years ago. And so people don't understand that this case was brought actually by the Democrats to the Supreme Court, not by the Republicans or the conservatives. And so the Supreme Court stood with 9 judges. 4 judges with Justice Breyer wrote, well, this law is no good. And 4 conservatives, headed by Thomas, wrote, this is an excellent law. We should actually abolish Roe v. Wade anyway. And the Chief Justice stood right there in the middle between those 4 and that 4 and wrote the following. 4 years ago, we said this law is not okay. I wrote the dissent. I'm the one who thought it was not okay then, and I still think it's not okay today. But, and this is the big but, this is the rule of law. Only the Supreme Court of the United States will decide what laws are good and not good. You down there in the Fifth Circuit and any other circuit cannot decide for yourself, even if you're Trump appointees, and even if you think that we have a majority of Trump appointees right now in the Supreme Court, you cannot decide that. And only on that ground, which is called the stare decisis, the precedent must stand. Only under those circumstances, the Chief Justice wrote, the law should be disqualified. And so he wrote alone, and so we have a very weak majority opinion consisting of 4 liberals who said that the law is no good, and 1 Chief Justice who wrote, the law is good, but it's not the job of the circuit court to say what law is good or not good. Only in the Supreme Court.
Let me ask you too, Duran. Because there's been a lot of conversation, a lot of analysis about how Chief Justice John Roberts has been behaving in this particular term on some, also becoming something of a swing vote in some real crucial cases. Also some surprises, right, from Neil Gorsuch and also Brett Kavanaugh. And so are we sort of, I don't know, are some observers, seasoned observers of the court, holding out hope that maybe these judges who were, 2 of them Trump appointed, Roberts Bush appointed, these are Republican appointed, classically conservative judicial experts or judges but are we sort of holding out hope that they're actually pragmatists, that they're centrist, and that they have kind of saw a reason on a number of key crucial cases? What does that all mean? I mean, the court's kind of behaving and acting a little bit differently on some cases, at least according to some seasoned observers.
Oh, absolutely. So with regard to the Chief Justice, let me start with him. He absolutely, after 15 years of the court, has turned to be both the swing vote, like you said, and the Chief Justice. And this is very rare. If you look at other justices like Justice O'Connor or then Justice Kennedy, who were the swing voters, they were not the Chief Justices. This is absolutely now the Roberts Court. And other than 2 cases, he was in the majority in all other cases, almost 95% of the cases. Whatever Roberts thought, that was the majority. And so sometimes he wrote alone, and he wrote a lot this term. Usually Chief Justices write 1 or 2 opinions, and then they assign important decisions to other. He wrote the DACA case. He wrote the 2 President Trump tax cases. He wrote basically the majority opinion in the abortion case. He wrote a lot this term, and he definitely now identify himself to be the Roberts Court, for better and the worse. Moves from conservative thinking to what you call pragmatism and more to the left has occurred throughout the court's history. There were a few, and David Soter is a recent example, and Justice Stevens was nominated by Nixon as another example. These are all conservatives who were nominated by, remember about Justice Souter, they called him the sure thing, that he will definitely be aligning up with the conservative each and every time. But when he was nominated, he moved very abruptly and very starkly to the left. A lot of justices, when they reach the Supreme Court and they realize the plight of immigrants, of gay and lesbian people, of all those minorities who reach to the Supreme Court and say, you are our last resort. Congress is not functioning because of political and other pressures. They will not legislate anything in our favor. Please help us. And after that many years of the court, they realize that it's in their power to help those people, and they do. And they do. And so definitely about Roberts, we see a move here to the center, but also to position the court as a non-political entity. No, we're not a bunch of Trump appointees who will do whatever the president thinks is right. In fact, he chastised the president more than once on very sloppy administrative work and what he called arbitrary and capricious reasons. For example, in the DACA case, he said, you can't just wake up one day and say, I don't like Obama, let's deport 700,000 kids who were born here. You can't do that. There's law in this country, but we have to remember he only told him, he gave him an F on the assignment, but he didn't say it's illegal. He said, go back, and I remember Trump a day later said, yeah, we'll file the proper paperwork. That's the term that the President of the United States used for decision to deport 700 DACA dreamers. He calls it paperwork because in his mind, the Supreme Court just told him that the paperwork was not okay. But it's not the paperwork. You cannot just wake up one day and decide that the policy of the previous president is not in your liking. You have to submit it to notice and comments, and then you have to bring out a rationale. Why do you want to deport? Why is it so important to deport all those kids who were born here and dream to stay here for no other reason than election of consequences? So the Chief Justice made it clear that that's not the case. With regard to that's a total.
Yeah, and Duran, we actually came up on the break. This is fascinating. We're going to have you back on a little bit more often, to kind of break down, because I have other questions, future questions. So we're going to bring you back a little bit sooner rather than later. So remind us, right? Because then still a lot of other big cases, consequential questions. And we've got the 2020 election. If things get real tight, the margins get tight in this election, especially we've got the role of vote by mail. Will the Supreme Court have to decide that? Could we see a scenario, something like that happening, like it happened in 2000, but the stakes being even higher in this particular situation? Duran, I'm sorry to let you go, but we're going to have to let you go. Duran Kalir is a professor of law at the Cleveland Marshall College of Law in Cleveland, Ohio, Cleveland State University's College of Law. He joins us by phone here on Reality Check. Duran, thanks so much for your time, man. Appreciate it.
Charles, always my pleasure, and I'll be happy to come back whenever you need me.
Excellent. All right, touch base with us, okay? And we'll be in touch. We'll have you back on. Thanks again. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back on the other side, phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Then in the 11 o'clock hour, part 2 of our Farming While Black discussion, our EcoWord series on black farming, or farming while black as we call it. We're getting into another part of that discussion this week at the 11 o'clock hour. So definitely, I know a lot of people had a lot to say and they had a lot of questions. So we're going to try to go next level on that discussion in the 11 o'clock hour. And then we got more for you in the noon hour as well. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
1 in 23 will be diagnosed with colorectal cancer in their lifetime, yet more than 60% of deaths from colorectal cancer could be avoided with preventative screening. A colonoscopy can save your life. Skip the pre-visit and schedule your screening directly at einstein.edu/colon. Colon cancer is preventable. Learn more at einstein.edu/colon.
The coronavirus continues to affect us all, and AARP is here in Philadelphia, actively supporting you and your community. Every day, they're providing trusted information from experts, working to protect people from fraud, supporting family caregivers, and making it easier for neighbors to help neighbors through the new AARP Community Connections website. Learn what AARP is doing to connect and support our community during this unprecedented time. We may be apart, but we're not alone. Click to connect at aarp.org/near you.
Support independent black media and join the 4Word movement now at 215-425-7875 or visit wordradio.com. Tune in every Saturday at 6 p.m. to Recovery Talk 101 with your host, Rick Ford, talking about addiction, treatment, and recovery. Right here on Word Radio. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, Word app, 215-634-8065. 866-361-0900. Also, folks on Facebook Live, appreciate you. Lois Ruben Marks, good morning to you. Michael Cord, fist back at you. Gary Hines, thank you for listening in, tuning in. You're saying don't expect much from Comcast. So I guess that's the Universal Student Broadband discussion we were having. Nakia Twin Campbell, good morning, brother Charles, and appreciate you too, Nakia. Good morning back at you, sister. And Melissa Brunson, good question here. Is there a reason for the discrepancy between President Obama's nominations and 45's President Trump? President Obama was able to only get through 55 Federal Circuit Court nominations, but Duran is correct. President Trump recently reached the 200 Federal Circuit Court judge milestone. He has unprecedented, his nominations, his confirmed judges have unprecedented control over a massive chunk of the federal judiciary, and the discrepancy is Senate Republicans. Senate Republicans have been in control, particularly Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. They've been in control since 2014. People just did not turn out in those 2010, 2014 midterms to back up President Obama. Those midterm elections are important. People did not turn out in those 2010, 2014 midterm elections. That's that was one of the things Michelle Obama was talking about in her documentary Becoming, and also her book Becoming. That's what she was really raw about, and I don't blame her. And so when you acquiesce control to the other side like that to make those confirmations, which a lot of us out there did. I voted in the midterms, and I know you probably did too, Melissa, and others did, but majority of people did not. And so as a result, they blocked the vast majority of President Obama's judicial nominations, and they got really bad after the 2014 midterms. Those last couple of years of the Obama presidency, there was already a lot of blocking of those nominations going on because Republicans had gained control of enough of the Senate to engage in some real effective obstruction of Obama federal judicial nominees. And it got even worse after the 2014 midterm. And we saw that, for example, with President Obama's selection of, his selection of Merrick Garland to fill the Supreme Court vacancy, and they blocked it and they blocked it and they blocked it all the way through till President Obama was out of office. And still a lot of folks did not vote in the 2016 election, in addition to a lot of other things that were going on. But people need to take responsibility, and we'll talk a little bit about that. There's some very concerning numbers. Our partners at Tendency Research just released a poll to me last night. I made that available at thebenote.com. 16% of Black respondents in that polling by Tendency Research, Lincoln Park Strategies, which partners with us here at WURD, 16% of Black voters saying they're not voting in the 2020 elections. It just completely blows my mind. I don't understand why. And I've been saying, like, these alarming data points show up in a number of polls, not just in the Tendency poll, where there's just a high number, there's a double-digit high number of Black voters saying they're not voting. This election is, for Black voters, is the most high stakes of all time. Black voters have the most to gain. Black communities have the most to gain, or they have the most. We have the most to lose out of everyone else in the outcome of this election, and that's just terrible. 16%. So I don't understand it. It has to go in reverse. It has to change. We got a lot of work to do between now and October, November. Let me go to Greg out of East Falls, who's calling in for a reality check. Greg,
how you doing, there, Charles?
How you doing?
All right, some of us, like to. It's not a criticism, but some of the law has been speaking to me. I understand how important it is, and I wanted to. The gentleman made a good point, and I wanted to elaborate on it. What I want to say is, I know people are going to get mad because anytime you say anything about Obama, everybody thinks that you're criticizing him. He's better than Trump. But I'm glad that you're bringing up, because the fact of the matter is, for 2 years of Obama's presidency, it was all Democratic. And that theory about this Mitch McConnell, that's true. But for 2 of it, just Google it right now, and it'll tell you. For 2 years, he had both chambers. And I've been mad at Obama ever since, because what this gentleman did, he said he was talking about the appointment, but the reason why they did it is very obvious to me, because they have, when Trump leaves, he has affected this country for life with all of those appointments. And I could not understand why Obama, and it says something about Casey and all of the other Democratic people who nominate these judges for the president's consideration. So we got to start looking at the Democrats. And because I'm mentioning that, doesn't mean I'm going to go, I hate some of the things the Democrats do. I certainly don't like what the Republicans are doing. Mitch McConnell, yes, he has done it, but that's the prevailing thought that they throw out there. But Obama, for him to do only 50 nominations is pathetic. And him being
55.
a lawyer, 55, okay. Well, fine. But he's a lawyer, a Harvard professor.
Right.
I know he understands the importance of justice affected our life like no one else.
But you understand what I was just saying, though. I do agree with you on a lot of levels, Greg. I think that I think Obama could have been a lot more aggressive in battling back against Senate Republicans. I mean, he only got 55 of those nominations pushed through to confirmation. There was a lot more that got blocked. He could have had a lot more confirmed. Only 55 got confirmed out of Trump's 200 that got fast-tracked. So a lot of it is Senate Republican obstruction. We need to understand that, and we need to understand why it's important to ensure. But to your point, I hear you. Like with Merrick Garland, I think Merrick Garland could have been a recess appointment, and he could have just went ahead and just bum rushed Merrick Garland into that Supreme Court seat, and then worried about the consequences of that later after Hillary Clinton potentially got reelected. I think there were a lot of things that Obama wasn't aggressive enough on. He didn't work hard enough on, to your point. But go ahead, real quick, finish up.
But Charles, here's the thing. For those 2 years, now think about it. Trump got 200-something in 3 years. Obama had 2 years. 2 years. All you got to do is Google it. It'll tell you. 2 years of a Democratic chamber. So So if Trump got 200 in 3 years, we could have got more than 55. I mean, that's pathetic.
Yeah.
You know,
It is.
no one,
I think people need to understand, though, Greg. I think it's a combination of. I mean, but you know, Trump had the luxury of a very well fixed Senate Republican power structure in place to rush that through. I mean, Republicans just work in ways that are a lot more aggressive than Democrats. Democrats they have this issue where they can't see things like they don't act as aggressively. Sometimes they don't have that kind of spine or that kind of boldness that Republicans do tactically and strategically. And Democrats have got to figure out a way to stop being so soft sometimes and how they're reacting or responding to that kind of Republican maneuvering. But the other thing too is that, like, you're right, to your point, Greg, Obama did not stress during those first 2 years to his constituency, to his base, hey, this is important. See, that's what Republicans do. They stress to their base, hey, you know what? These federal judges are important. And you just heard the law professor, 99% of laws are dictated by the federal circuit courts. Democrats need to start telling, their constituencies that at one time, black folks, we as a black community understood how important federal judges and Supreme Court picks were. All of us had a very basic understanding, oh, hey, this is important. And we leveraged the law in a lot of ways. For some reason now we're not doing that nowadays. We're not concerned about things. We're more concerned about whether or not Kanye West is going to run for president and what Chance the Rapper said than about the fact that President Trump just got 200. I heard more chatter about, some non-essential dumb stuff about Kanye than I did, from the black media than I did about the fact that Trump just reached 200 federal judicial nomination or a milestone. Come on, people. It's so it's frustrating. Like the things that is like essential in our like public discourse, and the things that we're paying attention to nowadays. I'm sorry, Greg. I'll let you go so I can go to AC out of West Philly, bring him on to have a reality check. AC.
Hey, good afternoon, Charles. I wanted to, I've been trying all week to hit a point, but before I do, I like the way that the gentleman, your last guest, slid his tribe in. So I'm going to talk about my tribe, not from a religious standpoint, but from a nationalist standpoint. I want to see somebody from my tribe nominated and confirmed as a Supreme Court justice by the next president. So I like how he slid that in.
Right, right. I think if Biden is elected, I think we'll get that.
Unabashful about what they want to say, and I have no problem with it as long as when we say it, it's no pushback. Right, right. Yeah, exactly. But I wanted to talk about Philadelphia Managing Director Brian Abernathy. He recommended a black female. I think they're trying to set the table for Sherelle Parker to get that position. What do you think about that?
To get the position of
the managing director,
managing Sherelle Parker for
the next mayor.
That's interesting. I haven't heard anything with respect to that. It's a fascinating thought.
The people that they're talking about for the next mayor, and that would really put her in the driver's seat to be the number 2 person.
That's some interesting game theory there. I'll give you that. I've always thought of Sherelle Parker as being I get a feeling like she'll be like the future city council president. I don't know. I just have always kind of envisioned her in that capacity in the future. But that's very interesting. That anything's possible nowadays. I never count anything out. Yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah, the Northwest never got a mayor, and they're hot about that because North Philly did with Street and West Philly did with 2 with Nutter and Good. Right. So they claim to have all this power, which I'll give them that, but they've never gotten a mayor. And they've only had 1 city council president. So I think that may be part of the deal moving forward for Kenny, too, because he's not, to me, going to pick an African-American man to deal with every day. He's going to, that Abernathy set the table with that, knowing that which to me was kind of disrespectful to his number 2 man, his deputy, the brother Tomar Alexander. He came out and said it on TV. So check that out, that he's recommending a black female.
Yeah. I love the way you put that, AC. Like, West got their mayor, North got theirs. It's so fascinating and comical, like how like Philly is not one Philly, right? Or Black Philly's not even one Black Philly. It's like different universes and countries and it's like Middle Earth. It's like a Tolkien novel. It's like Philly's like Lord of the Rings, But go ahead.
If you can think about it, that's why they threw the roadblock on Hardy Williams Jr., which I wish him good health. He came out and said he had the COVID. They threw the roadblock on him. So, with Kitty on the kitchen table. So, from Marion Taft goes home. So, it is what it is, man.
It is. We do hope good health for the senator. And everyone else out there who's still battling with COVID-19. This thing is real, and so and infection rates still high everywhere, including Philly. So just everyone, please be safe and be healthy out there. AC, some fine game theory and some great points there. Really appreciate you as always. Thank you, Greg, too, for calling in. All right, let's take a break, and when we come back on the other side, we're getting into a Farming While Black discussion. We got Earl Harvey and also Daryl Addison coming up next here on Reality Check. We're getting into an eco-word session, a part 2 of Farming While Black here in the 11 o'clock hour, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Check out the Source lineup on Word Radio. Mondays, get ready for the rapping professor, Dr. Aaron Smith. On Tuesdays, it's Andrea Lawful Sanders. Then on Wednesdays, it's the Black Women's Leadership Council. On Thursdays, it's a second helping of Andrea Lawful Sanders. And on Fridays, it's Tiffany Bacon. Don't miss the Source. Monday through Thursday, 1 p.m. till 4 p.m. and Fridays, 10 a.m. till 1 p.m. Exclusively on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on wordradio.com and on the Word Radio app.
I'm Joe Biden, candidate for president, and I approve this message. I'm asking for your support and to join our team. We need a leader to unite this country. We need a leader who will push an agenda to move everyone forward, to allow every American the opportunity to share in this country's prosperity. Someone who will lead, but also who will listen. Someone we can be proud of. I promise you this election isn't about me. It's about you, your family, your community, and our country. The moment has come for our nation to deal with systemic racism, to deal with the denial of the promise of this nation to so many. It's time to make healthcare a right, not a privilege. It's time to give every student the opportunity to get a good education, no matter what their zip code is. And it's time to give workers the pay and dignity they deserve. This is the United States of America, and there's nothing we cannot do if we do it together.
Paid for by Biden for president.
Pico has many ways to help you lower your energy usage and save money at home. Here's one. Have an old working fridge or freezer in your garage or basement? Pico will pick it up, dispose of it responsibly, and give you a $75 rebate. That's right, $75. Plus, you could save as much as $150 a year on your energy bill by getting rid of it. Just schedule your pickup at pico.com/recycling or call 1-888-5-PICO-SAVE today. Be sure your fridge or freezer is plugged in and working at time of pickup.
He was the heart of your family, and he taught you our history. He helped you fix your first flat. He was the best backyard DJ around. And every time he'd tell a story, he'd own the room. But now more than ever, he may feel alone. Today, older adults and their loved ones are struggling to connect, in a time when connection has never been more important. But there is something we can do. Embrace our older loved ones through StoryCorps Connect. With StoryCorps Connect, you can honor seniors remotely with an interview about their life. Every interview will be archived at the Library of Congress, becoming part of American history, so that years from now, future generations can listen in.
All right, Grandpa, what's one piece of advice you have for me?
Just 3 words, sweetheart. Live with courage.
The man that had the best stories still has plenty of stories to tell. So connect virtually and share the conversation of a lifetime at storycorpsconnect.org/AARP. Connect, honor, share. StoryCorps Connect. A message from AARP, StoryCorps, and the Ad Council.
Home of the Happy Hour. With Sincerely Sarita. This is Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Streaming live at wordradio.com and on the Word Radio app. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and WordRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. We are headed into an eco-word session. We are farming while black here on the home of Black Talk Media, WURD. This is a part of our eco-word environmental justice journalism initiative. Go to WURD.com for more content and information, great insights about the environment at the intersection of race, racism, class. We do it all there at EcoWord. We're trying to actually expand on that. One way we go about expanding on that is through these discussions here on Reality Check, including Farming While Black had a very enlightening discussion last Thursday for an hour during this 11 o'clock hour about farming while black. Why black farming, especially in this day and time, in these very uncertain times, these very food insecure times, is so relevant and it is so critical. And so we have two guests with us. They actually called in, joined us during our discussion last week, and they happen to be experts in this space, so we figured we'd bring them on for a more formal segment to have a conversation about this, and we're going to continue this conversation for the next 2 or 3 weeks or so. Earl Harvey is the publisher of Black Professional News. Is New Jersey based, is based in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Go to the blackprofessionalsnews.com for more there, and he's also founder of the Black Business Leadership Coalition in the region. He joins us by phone. And also Daryl Addison is founder and CEO of Torpedo Pot. Go to torpedopot.com for more information. You have heard them advertise here on WURD. Fascinating innovation. Kind of makes farming a little bit more simpler, more accessible to many folks out there who are interested. But these two have been thinking about this issue of black farming and the need for it during these times. They join us by phone. How are you gentlemen doing this morning? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us, Charles. Thank you for having us.
Excellent, excellent. So, Earl, I'm going to start with you on this conversation. First, the Black Business Coalition, Black Business Leaders Coalition that you've started. What is that effort exactly? And talk about the connection to farming, why you all have been thinking very deeply about not just farming, but also creating a robust supply chain from farm to table for black communities.
Well, yeah, Charles, we realized about a couple of months ago that coming out of this COVID situation, our black business community was going to be in a very fragile state. Mm-hmm. Okay? It's expected that over 50% of black-owned businesses may close as a result of this COVID shutdown. So we took the liberty of forming this business leadership coalition so we could get an advanced start on putting together a strategic plan for the business community so that when we came out of COVID, we wouldn't be all over the place and be disorganized. We knew we were going to have to be right on point to get our businesses the services that they need in order to keep them in business. It's expected that 50% of black-owned businesses may close post-COVID. Yeah. And, we certainly want to mitigate that effort.
Yeah, yeah. What sort of role does farming or agritech or that whole family of like food-focused industries or sector have on the fate of that strategic plan? Like how does that play into this? How does that fit into that?
Well, right now, Charles, we're examining every possible aspect of how our businesses can be more inclusive in the business economy in this country. This is the largest consumer, country on the planet.
Yeah.
Okay. And we know that those businesses have to be constantly supplied. And, the question is where they're getting their supplies from. Okay. Who are they purchasing from in order to run these mega corporations? Mm-hmm. And traditionally, our businesses have been marginalized to the point that we can't get into the supply chain, okay, either through inherent racism or scale. They come up with every kind of reason to keep us out of the total economy of providing goods and services to this country. So we're looking at every possible avenue right now where we can include our businesses in that chain. Because as you've been seeing recently, corporate America is big on making donations around this time of year, in the climate that we're in. We want to give to the NAACP or Black Lives Matter. We want to give to the Urban League, which is all good. We respect those organizations. But we're demanding more sustainable commitments from corporate America right now. If you're going to give $10 million to the NAACP, which I have no problem with, how about giving $100 million to black farmers, okay, so So we can start supplying these restaurant chains like McDonald's and Chick-fil-A and all these places that are serving food to our consumers. We're buying all this food, okay?
Yeah.
But where do we fit into the supply chain so we can become an earning component and not just a donation?
Yeah, no, that's where the real money is at. Daryl, you have Torpedo Pot, fantastic new innovation. It's like farm in a pot, and you're making that sort of, you're making it, more than just a hobby. You're making farming like highly accessible, where people can like grow their own food and grow it rather easily, scale it up rather easily in their own front or backyard. You mentioned last week the need to specialize more in the technology, especially agricultural technology. Expound on that a little bit. I want to give you an opportunity. That's why we brought you back this week, for you to expound on that. How do we encourage and expand agricultural innovation or that kind of technology, like a torpedo pot, for example, beyond just like urban farming or urban gardening? How do we scale this up in your mind?
Torpedo pot has the ability to transform small businesses into huge agribusiness.
Mm-hmm.
And our take on it is that within all of these communities, the Philadelphia community, New Jersey, all these communities, you're sitting on a wealth of potential. With today's technology, with Torpedo Pot, I just walked out my house this morning, and I have one planter, one Torpedo Pot that grows by itself, and I just collected 8 pounds of cucumbers. And in one pot with 24 inches, I'm growing over 70 green pepper plants that will yield me close to 125 or plus green peppers, and it grows automatically all by itself. So with these type of results that we're seeing, we're so successful in our results. We have the Secretary of Commerce who wants his own line of planters. We believe that we can move into these communities and create agribusiness automatically. There is something that's brewing within this current environment, and what's brewing is that we're looking at new sources of revenues, new sources that people can generate income for them and their families, new possibilities of new areas of going into, so that you can take the technology and not have it in a laboratory that's owned by DuPont or some big companies, but putting it in the hands of everyday Americans so that they can provide for their families and their children, so they can, so the cities can develop revenues and not have to spend a lot of money on different social programs. So we believe that Torpedo Pot has the potential, putting this agriculture technology in people's hands so they can grow millions of pounds of food, reduce their carbon footprint, and to sell this food globally across our blockchain.
Wow. And, let me ask you about this, Daryl, because we had a fascinating discussion. We had the program manager for onWURD, Janine Kayembe, made a very important point about seeds that I wasn't aware of. I kind of maybe had heard it in passing, but never really paid much attention to it. But it's just fascinating, the difference between like your real, actual, natural, organic seeds and your GMO, your genetically modified or genetically engineered seeds. You don't want the genetically engineered seeds. Like, that's why the Haitians, after their disasters, they burn seeds, free seeds they were getting from Monsanto. They burned them, as she was explaining, because they were like, well, we can only use this once, grow the food, and then suddenly we're hooked like drug addicts on these seeds. Talk about that if you can, Daryl. Address that real quick. Like, well, okay, we have these torpedo pots. Suddenly people are growing. They got their own mini farms and their houses. They're selling, like you said, like $2,500 worth of green peppers on a 24-inch torpedo pot, but then they need to get the right seed, right? So they can grow that stuff over and over again.
There's two aspects to that, and thank you, Charles, for bringing that up. Is that one I like to bring out is that when you're hungry, it doesn't matter what seeds you get. That's number one.
Right. That's a good point. Okay.
But the problem that we're faced with, and I'm glad you brought that up, is you can buy a torpedo pot. You can plant your garden all you want. You can bring in haul in dirt. You can bring in underline. You can you spend all this money tilling. The average farmer spends about $400 a year, just taking care of his garden, which is an enormous amount of money. But the problem is that not only is your soil bought from a different person, but your seeds are controlled by a monopoly also. So with Torpedo Pot, our holistic approach is not only just – we want to not only be in the technology. Our technology is being purchased all around the world. I mean, we have pots that are going to Israel. We have pots that are going to the Virgin Islands. I mean, people realize the ability to grow food without having to be there. But to answer your question, we want to be able not only to take the technology, but to own part of that marketplace. Earl brought us something extremely important. What is good, it's not good to be able to go to the liquor store and just buy the liquor when you don't really own the liquor. You don't know where it comes from. You don't know how it's produced. So with the Torpedo Pot, we need to move into the seed industry. We need to move into the germination industry. We need to move into the soil industry. We're looking at a combination approach that will allow our consumers, to allow those who work with us, to give them 2 feet to stand on so they can build their business. If I just sell them one aspect of a system that provides for the family and not being able to provide the seeds and the water and the soil and all these other things, then we've lost our purpose. But it has to be a holistic approach. And all of these things, even though the different seeds and where they come from matter with the GMO seeds and the control that they have, if you took a potato, when you were my dad's fathers and Miss Dells and your fathers were growing up with Earl's parents, we would cut a potato, put it in the water, it would reroot itself. And it was hard. You could just take it and put it in the ground. To take today's potatoes, if you cut it up, it will spoil and rot.
Yeah. Yeah, I've noticed that. Yeah, that's a serious issue. Earl, I want to go back to you, and then Daryl, you can jump in later on this question too. In your mind, we're thinking about farming while black, and so I've been having not just conversations with you gentlemen, but also with others, not just in Philly, but along the Northeast corridor from New York all the way down as far as Richmond. Black businesses, people who are in black urban farming, people who are looking at land and thinking about, I want to build a farm. Black restaurant owners or black takeout food owners who are saying, you know what, I just hate constantly having to buy my supplies and food from white suppliers. Are there black farmers that I can buy my food from? I'm having this conversation over and over again, and that's why I'm starting to think, there's a real like tipping point moment happening here. How do we scale up a framework, right, where everyone in the community is adequately fed, adequately supplied, but also making some serious like pandemic era or post-pandemic era money off this? Earl?
Well, Charles, it has to be a collective effort. Okay, it cannot be one-off. Okay, you have to have the government and the nonprofit community, public and private partnerships. All these entities have to come together and make it a plan, because there's a cost associated with all this. Okay, and we know that. And the reason why these mass producers are able to supply everybody is because they're producing on such a mass scale that the price becomes minuscule on the purchasing side. And the bottom line is always what's being looked at when it comes to business. Okay, even small restaurant owners, they would love to buy from a private farm, but if they're paying $1 or $2 more per pound, okay, for that same product, it becomes a business decision.
Yeah.
So, we have to look at, if we're going to be looking at this as a viable entity, then we have to look at, what are the transportation networks that are involved to move this product. Okay.
Right.
All this sounds good, but when we get the product to market, what are the refrigeration capacities to hold the product? Okay. And then what are the distribution networks that we need to move the product on a local level? So, it really has to be thought out. It absolutely can be done, okay? But it has to be done the right way, because the one thing about food, Charles, that we all know is that it has time sensitivity to it, okay? You can't get product up here in the marketplace and have it spoiling before it gets to where it's supposed to go.
Right,
So, I agree with the conversation. It's just a matter of putting the plan together.
Yeah, and I get a feeling we're going to have more conversations like this. Darryl, I want you to weigh in on that too, because I'm trying to think about reimagining something. First of all, thinking big, right? Reimagining something beyond just, because we're having like this very encouraging and dynamic discussion about urban farming, but I'm looking at like black farming or urban farming empire scale, right? I feel like that vision is there, like, and so how do we get there? So expound on that a little bit or add to that conversation, Daryl, and what Earl was just saying.
Yeah, Earl brought out a very good point, and thanks, Charles, for allowing us to speak on this subject. But Torpedo Pot is a game changer. Just imagine. Yeah. Earl brought up something very important. You're growing food on the farm. Most farmers don't have a bachelor's in biochemistry. They know nothing about biology. Most farmers know nothing about soil science and agronomy. What they're doing is that they'll get these agriculture companies that come in, tell them to use these fertilizers, use them at certain times, and your crop should be fine. And not only that, but once they sell their goods are thrown into a co-op. They can't sell freely on the marketplace. The average farmer makes about $10,000. Let me see. I think it's 50% of the farmers in the United States make less than $10,000 a year. So that's our marketplace right now. Because guess what? When you're growing at home, or you're growing on one of our small farms, first of all, your investment is very, very low. You don't need agrochemicals if you don't need it. You don't need to transport your goods and services. You have it locally. You don't need to be able to increase your carbon footprint. There's a lot of benefits to growing where you're at right now as opposed to. So automatically you've eliminated a lot of your costs. I can go outside right now, set up my torpedo pot, have it run by itself with no human intervention, and I can actually grow food like nobody's ever seen before. Matter of fact, we grow more food than hydroponics, aquaponics, or in the ground combined together. And it's done automatically. So in these small communities, as far as upscaling real quickly, they can upscale in a matter of a couple of days. And if they wanted to expand their ability to produce food, our modular systems allows you to connect as many modular units as you want to open up your own indoor facility to grow millions of pounds of food.
Interesting. Yeah, we need to talk more. Unfortunately, we ran up on the break. Fascinating discussion. I really appreciate you, gentlemen. I'm going to bring you two gentlemen back at a later point, and I'm sure I'm going to be talking with you offline, and and trying to reimagine, envision, and get into something where and help out with that implementation as well, because this is just very fascinating, and we just need to get to that point, and we need to do it rapidly as well, especially not just because of the pandemic, but because of everything else, because we just don't know what's over the horizon. We've been talking with Earl Harvey. Earl Harvey is the founder, publisher of Black Professionals News. Go to the blackprofessionalsnews.com. He's also founder of the newly formed Black Business Leadership Coalition. And also Daryl Addison is founder and CEO of Torpedo Pot. Check out torpedopot.com. They have advertised here on WRD. Fascinating innovation, and definitely people looking forward to learning more about that. I'm sure you caught the ears of many folks out there, Daryl. People looking forward for a new kind of business opportunity and hustle. So thanks so much for describing that and inserting it in this conversation on Farming While Black. Thank you both. Just a short conversation, but don't worry, we're going to have more of it later on in the future.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's take a break, and when we come back on the other side, we'll be talking with Janine Kayembe, who is the project manager for onWURD.com. We're going to continue this discussion on Farming While Black after this break. And phone lines are open too, by the way, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Phone lines are open for folks to join in if they have questions or if they have comments. And, we're looking at reimagining, envisioning, scaling up Farming While Black. Why that's so important. Janine Kayembe is going to be joining us next here on Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Don't miss the Electric Magazine Show, hosted by Cody Anderson and Vicki Leach. Saturday mornings from 7 a.m. till 9 a.m. exclusively on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Do you need health insurance for your children? The Children's Health Insurance Program, also known as CHIP, provides quality, affordable health insurance for Pennsylvania kids. CHIP ensures that kids can go to the doctor, receive health screenings and vaccines, and get what they need to live a healthy childhood. Families can be covered by CHIP no matter how much money they make. If you've experienced a recent change in employment or income, CHIP may be a good option for your family. Visit chipcoverspakids.com to apply or learn more.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
WordRadio.com. Show some love for your favorite neighborhood with Word Radio. It's the Summer of Freedom Virtual Neighborhood Love Tour. Mondays and Thursdays now through August 20th from 1 p.m. till 2:30 p.m. Shining a light on Philadelphia's neighborhoods with a focus on neighborhood history, Philadelphia's freedom fighters, and community resources that are helping to shape the city's future. Mondays with the rapping professor Dr. Aaron Smith, and Thursdays with Andrea Lawful Sanders. It's the Summer of Freedom Virtual Neighborhood Love Tour. Mondays and Thursdays, 1 p.m. till 2:30 p.m. exclusively on Word Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WordRadio.com, the Word Radio app, and on Word TV via YouTube and Facebook. The Summer of Freedom Virtual Neighborhood Love Tour is sponsored by Wells Fargo and Pico. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and WordRadio.com.
All right, Janine Kayembe is project manager for our environmental justice journalism initiative, EcoWord, ecoword.com for more information there. Hashtag EcoWord for more in that conversation. We're continuing with this conversation on Farming While Black, giving you a part two. Janine Kayembe is joining us now by phone, and phone lines are open if you'd like to join in on the discussion. We had a lot of feedback and a lot of folks who had questions, who had comments, some of their own ideas too. So let's present them. You can do that now. Open phone lines throughout this hour. And, we're talking about Farming While Black, but we're also talking about that other issue. It's very important, food insecurity, trying to achieve food sovereignty, Black community control, and expansion over their food, because we talk a lot about food deserts. We talk a lot about how people are going hungry right now as we speak at this very moment. People, children, kids, it's a lot of important things we need to touch on. People going hungry and a lot of pain. Food insecurity is a big issue. Food insecurity was already high in a place like Philly, for example. About 25% of people in Philadelphia food insecure. That's high. Imagine what that number is now as we're in the pandemic. So it was already high before the pandemic. Imagine what that is now during the pandemic. We really need to have serious conversation. And then we wonder where all this violence is coming from. Food insecurity has a lot, and food deserts has a lot to do with that. We got to talk about this, and we have to act on it now. There's a lot of serious planning conversations and mapping sessions we need to get into. Janine, how are you doing?
Hey, good morning, Charles. How are you? I'm doing
all right. Good morning. Excellent. No, thanks for joining us. We appreciate this. So once again, 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900. Also Twitter, hashtag EcoWord, and I'm at Ellison Report, and Facebook Live. I know people left comments at the Facebook live stream as well. Janine, you had a great conversation with Earl Harvey and also Torpedo Pot's Daryl Addison. They were kind of describing in a business sense how to scale this thing up. I want to get your thoughts, as a Black farmer, like, how are we reimagining or envisioning kind of that future where there's like Black communities just self-sustaining on a food level, like really getting to that point there where we're self-sustaining and we're making a big business opportunity out of this, a big job development opportunity, green jobs opportunity out of this as well?
Yeah, so I want to start off by saying that, you were talking a little bit earlier about food access and, food desert. I think the first step in this is like really being nuanced about the language so we know what it is that we're fighting against. And that's a food apartheid. So they are separating us from the food that we have the right to. And I live in the desert right now. I'm right in Joshua Tree, California, which is the Mojave Desert. And I'm looking at how beautiful, how lush, how much green, how much food that has the potential to grow and live here. And I'm looking at just what's lush and already living here, like cacti and different medicinal plants. So it's not that we are living in neighborhoods where food is scarce. We're living in neighborhoods where food is systemically being positioned to us in a way that deteriorates our health. And, you know, when we're thinking of that, when we think of a desert, we're thinking desolate, and we're thinking that there is no businesses, that there are no farmers, that there are no neighborhood growers, neighborhood chefs that are creating this autonomous community in order to feed people. And that's like a lot of where my background comes from. And, you know, it's very, very interesting to create a closed economy within your neighborhood, starting with food. And I know some neighborhoods do that. You have the grandmas and the aunties who have these, like, small kitchens, home kitchens where they're serving up 100 platters, you know, things like that. And it's really about, and it always comes down to the resources when you want to create an economy, right? We need that capital. A lot of folks are doing this off of their food stamps. So, you know, creating this, like, closed economy with this access to capital is how we're going to really start to build this new type of food system that we don't have to take a part in what's happening in the neighborhoods, because just like where we were on 11th and York, we were able to distribute food. We were able to, you know, teach folks how to grow. And talking about the economy, we're talking about learning. And this was just a central hub, which is happening all across the country. And it's not just happening in urban farms or gardens. This movement is also happening within restaurants, within the food workers movement in general. So I think when we start to think of, okay, we're being targeted, what jobs and positions can we create that help combat this food apartheid, which is, you know, like I said, creating our own Black restaurants, continue to create our own Black farms and gardens and food distribution companies, and partnering with food distribution companies who understand this type of framework that Black and brown people are being targeted when it comes to food. And building that strength in a community can really create a food system that is able to grow in the direction of our health and our wellness and growth for our kids.
No, spot on assessment there, Janine. As we try to have this vision board session on Farming While Black, got a lot of interest, got folks calling in. So Janine, you're the subject matter expert for the remainder of this hour here on onWURD. We're here on Reality Check. Oli Neon out of Nicetown is calling us for a Farming While Black discussion, has some questions and some feedback. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. You are doing how?
All right.
I came across an organization called the National Black Farmers, National Black Farmers, I can't get the last name out, but they're in Virginia or North Carolina. Association, yes. Are you familiar? I guess you are familiar with them.
Yes, I am. Those are my elders.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
John Boyd, Black Farmers Association, right? Oh, go ahead, Brethren Olanian, go ahead.
Well, I'm on my way on a bicycle trip, and I'll be bicycling through their farming area, their farming capital. I believe it's in North Carolina or Virginia. I forget which one. And I talked to a sister from there, and I just had her name right in front of me and then it went away. Anyway, she says she's interested in coming to Philadelphia to help us out. And since the guest there knows of this group, I'm quite sure you know the Black farmer who I'm talking about. She's one of the officers. So definitely I'd like to see that come here to Philadelphia and for us to buy while being Black from our own food growers.
Excellent. Yeah, and if you could, in fact, folks should email you too to connect with you, Janine, at ecoword@wordradio.com, ecoword@wordradio.com. So Brethren, Elder Olanian can reach out to you.
Yeah, I would love to connect. There is this thing called the Black Urban Gardeners Conference that happens. And, I mean, I'm sure it's going to be postponed for this year, but there are a lot of Black farmers meetups and ways and places to get connected with each other to continue to grow this community.
Let me go back to the phones. Antoinette out of Southwest is calling for a Farming While Black discussion. Ms. Antoinette, how are you doing?
How you doing, Brother Ellison, and hi to your guest.
Hey.
I recall years ago where they were selling farmers GMO seeds and had them signing contracts, and at the same time, those GMO seeds would not produce for the following year, and those farmers wound up losing their land and the equipment, and there was a lot of the farmers that committed suicide. So them GMO seeds are no good, and so it was a good thing that they did burn them up. And the other guy, Brother Darrell, where he said, when you're hungry, you're hungry. But I'd rather go hungry than eat them GMO seeds because they'll kill you. They damage your organs, your whole system. It'll kill you. That's like a slow death with cancer. So that's all I wanted to put out there. Thank you.
No, thank you, Janine. Yeah, and I think Brother Darrell was. Yeah, I don't think he was supporting in any way like GMO seeds. I think he was just making he wanted to make a larger point, which he did. That we're going to have to start thinking about like how we can get into seed development, so we can get away from GMO seeds. But he was saying, hey, I think he was quipping a little bit there, to say, well, there's a lot of folks who are forced into situations where like they feel like that's the only alternative they have when they shouldn't. But I want to get your thoughts on that, Janine, like, scaling up into, because you made a really good point last week, Janine, about the GMO seeds, if, especially as we're thinking about scaling up on black farming, on black-owned, self-sufficient farming and an expanded farming industry, right? We're going to have to think about the seeds, right? That's like the core of this, the foundation of it. And so how do we do that? How do we go about that, like making our own seeds?
Yeah, so, last week we had on Alexandra Barlow, who's also a seed keeper. If this is something that you are interested in, if this is something that, you feel really connected to, it really just starts with creating your own seed library, your own seed collection. There are a lot of amazing farmers out there who are making, who have just seed farms and are creating heirloom seeds from seeds that have been passed down, that have been collected over years and time. And it's really also a family thing too. If you have a black family, then somebody in that family was a farmer. And somebody, in that lineage has some seeds in an envelope somewhere. And that's just a part of you really reconnecting with, yourself and your roots. But there's a really great company, the partner of the head farmer at Bartram's Garden for folks who are in Philadelphia. But for folks listening elsewhere, the company called True Love Seeds. They're really great out of Philadelphia, and you can order online, and they have a plethora of heirloom seeds, which are seeds that have been passed down and that are non-GMO, that have not been, when we're talking heirloom, we're talking almost thousands of years, some of these seeds. I know myself, we were gifted some corn from the indigenous brothers and sisters of the Hopi Nation, and those seeds go back maybe 3,000 years. So, people are out there. I would start, for folks that are listening in Philly again, looking at True Love Seeds, and they have a really great selection of things from all over the world that have been cultivated organically and, that you keep in your seed library for as long as your maybe great-grandchildren.
Let me. We've got some long distance calls here, Janine. I have real quick. Rick out of Germany is calling in for a Farmer While Black conversation. Rick, how are you doing from Deutschland?
Struggling to breathe, brother. Struggling to breathe. Wearing the mask.
Right.
I have a question for the guest. Did she say she was from Joshua Tree, California?
She's out there now, right? Am I correct?
Yes. I had a farm in North Philadelphia and gained a lot of skills, and now me and my family are building our farm and homestead here in Joshua Tree, California. We just started a few months ago when the pandemic started, and we'll be cultivating our land here.
would you care to explain to the audience where that park, where Joshua Tree is in California?
Yeah, it's in Southern California, right near the Mojave Desert. I'm in between Los Angeles, Las Vegas, and Arizona. And right now, the mountain range that I'm looking at is Joshua Tree National Park, which is a very special place that has these amazing, gigantic rock sculptures and, rock formations that are thousands of years old, and just has a very interesting landscape as far as the desert, beautiful wildflower blooms, and really, really lush landscape. But yeah,
when you say lush landscape, does that mean it's fairly easy to grow food there?
Yeah, it's, we get 16 hours of sun, so I'll be able to grow lots of stuff. I'm just looking into my yard at the little bunnies and chipmunks, though, who are going to make it hard. But, yes, if there's trees that grow here that are drought resistant, a lot of plants that we have collected the seeds of are drought resistant. Some corn, sorghum, which is mainly grown in the sub-Sahara by our sisters there. A bunch of different things are able to grow in this landscape as long as you're not scared to try.
Thank you for the time.
Oh,
yes,
thank you,
Rick, calling in from Germany. Wow.
Yeah, thank you, Elder Rick, from calling in from Deutschland. So appreciate you listening in. A lot of folks listening in throughout, not just throughout Philly, but throughout the world. We appreciate listening through our live streams and our Word app and Word TV. Let me take a break, Janine. We still got you. Derek out of Colorado, hold on for just one moment. Also, Mayo out of Center City, Philly. Hold on just 1 second. We're going to continue this discussion through the rest of the 11 o'clock hour, Farming While Black. And we got Janine Kayembe, onWURD project manager, and who's joining us from Southern California right now. And we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
In Pennsylvania, everyone counts, and everyone needs to participate in the census. Our population count determines our voice in government and how much federal funding our communities receive for health care, food assistance, education, transportation, housing, and more. So every infant and child, every foreign and U.S. citizen, everyone matters. For a stronger future, we all need to count. To learn more, go to pa.gov/census.
Be heard. Want another way to join the conversation? Follow us on social media using the hashtag onWURD. Be heard. Stay connected to Word Radio. Independent Black Media.
These are unprecedented times. Challenging how the YMCA works to strengthen community as we have for nearly 170 years. But we've always found ways to help people and communities in times of crisis. Right now, Ys across the country are providing emergency childcare, shelter, food programs, and outreach to seniors, but we can't do it alone. Whether you're connected to the Y or have a fond Y memory, we need you to stay with us. Reach out to your local Y today and stay with us for a better us.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. We're having a Farming While Black discussion. Phone lines are open at 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Linda Shields, thank you for listening in or watching us, viewing us through our Facebook live stream, our Word TV stream. Linda Shields saying, Farming While Black, very interesting. Torpedo pots, actually it's called. Definitely need more time to discuss. Thank you. You're welcome, Linda Shields. Really appreciate that. And Arnetta Pierce watching from Arizona, thank you as well. And all those watching in Greater Philly and beyond. Let me go back to the phone lines. Janine, we have Janine Kayembe, project manager for onWURD.com. Let me go to Derek out of Colorado, who's been calling in for a Farming While Black conversation. Derek, what's good?
Yeah, that's what's going on. Is I have some questions in my area. They had a neighborhood where they kept them trying to get a grocery store, so they went to hydroponics. And the questions I have for you, the hydroponics where they grow the veggies and everything, are they the nutrients, the nutrients are going to be just as the hydroponics? And also, somebody had mentioned that he said, depending what part of the country that you're in, course, the soil is better than other, like down south, maybe Pennsylvania, and then this guy was from Iowa, and he talks about Colorado. He says Colorado is very difficult to grow because it's semi-arid and everything. And he says a lot of times, he says the soil's been depleted of all the minerals and vitamins because they started putting all these chemicals, and it's basically depleted. So he says that's probably what's going on. So even if you do grow veggies and all these kind of things, what about the vitamins and minerals that are maybe missing from the soil that you could be eating an apple, you could be eating something like this, but it may not have the nutrients and vitamins as much because the soil depletion of the minerals and vitamins from soil. Can anything be done for that? Anything could be as far as
Janine, you want to?
So, that, and a lot of folks think that flowers are just for beauty and just to give someone when you love someone. Flowers actually put a lot of nutrients into the soil. I explained a little bit last segment that the farm that we had in the middle of North Philadelphia, farmers build their soil. It's not kind of just like a one plant and, you keep going. We really, for the first couple years, we planted a bunch of sunflowers, and sunflowers extract lead, and they put different minerals back into the soil once they're composted and go back into the soil. And they also bring other microbes and bugs and all types of other living things that create a just diverse environment for this plant to live in. So there's a lot of ways to amend your soil. People use compost, of course. If you're the soil that you have, if you're just growing in top soil that might not have nutrients, you can buy compost. You can create your own compost if you have a little backyard, or if you're able to. You take your food scraps and you take your coffee grounds and you keep layering it. You might throw some worms in that bucket. So there's a bunch of different processes that you can create nutrients for your soil. I know different folks in the cannabis industry, they use bat guano, which is bat excrement. They use fish emulsion, which is just blended up fish. So there's so many ways to go to your local garden store. If you're in Philadelphia, I love going to Primex out in Glenside. And they have all of these different things that you can mix in. But if you want to do it organically and naturally, there's a bunch of flowers like marigolds, nettles, callaloo is even really great, and sunflowers are the number one for sure to extract lead and to put nutrients back into your soil.
Mm-hmm. What about hydroponics? Is that safe?
Yes, hydroponics is definitely safe.
And let me, I don't mean to cut you off there, Janine.
No
real quick here. If you could, Janine, just explain, because there are a lot of listeners out there who may not understand what hydroponics is. Like, first,
so hydroponics is when you're using water,
Thank you, Derek.
Water and nutrients as a garden bed, as your growing medium instead of soil. So you have a bunch of plants in a little pond situation that float, and those roots at the bottom begin to grow because you're feeding it this nutrient. Some people, hydroponics is a little more tricky because you have these liquid nutrients that you're working with, nitrogen, potassium, and so forth. What we have done that works a little bit better and you get bang for your buck is I have tested multiple aquaponics systems where you're able to grow your fish, whether it be goldfish or koi, or, you can have a little pond in your backyard and pump that water to your garden bed, whether it be soil or rocks or whatever it is, and you're able to use the fish waste as nitrogen and nutrients for your plants. And that's a really good organic way of going about it. A lot more technical, and you can Google all of this stuff. And a really great black farmer, Will Allen, who was up in Wisconsin, one of the largest urban farms in the country at one point, they were growing all different types of fish, one of them being pacu, which grows in Brazil as a type of piranha. So they were using this piranha and these different plants growing in this ecosystem together to give it a natural fertilizer. So yes, hydroponically grown stuff is safe and super yummy. You can taste the water in it just like you can taste the earth of the soil in other vegetables you eat. And, as long as folks are going the organic route, your food is gonna be great.
All right. Let me go to Mayo. Thank you for that, too. And thank you, Derek, for calling in from Colorado. Mayo out of Center City.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm the person who called before. I'm growing tomatoes and herbs in my apartment. And I made the statement that it's a container that's out. It's called Smart Pot. A Smart Pot is PBA free. You can grow larger vegetables like watermelons, zucchinis, onions, all out of Smart Pot. You look on the internet, you'll see it. Also, torpedo pots by Mr. Addison. Excellent product. I encourage anybody, don't walk, run to the internet and type in torpedo pots so you can see what a fascinating what Mr. Addison has created. And that's also good for people who live in apartments. If you have seeds, it's so hard to find seeds now. Don't make the mistake that I made. If you're not going to use the seeds right away, store the seeds in your freezer, and that will keep the seeds whenever you want to use them.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great
appreciate
information.
that too. So that other product you were talking about now, Torpedo Pot, they have advertised, continue to advertise on WRD. I don't think that other company has. So we need to encourage these businesses that our listeners are using to advertise on WRD. So just to kind of put that out there. So if anybody happens to know who that company is, encourage them to do that on the Home of Black Talk Media.
Janine,
go ahead if you want to respond to that. That was fascinating.
Yeah,
what Ms.
no,
Mayo
that
just brought
was
up.
very informational. I haven't used any small growing, home growing systems like that. I've always wanted to test them out. I'm a good old-fashioned put it in the dirt. But I'm sure for smaller spaces that those types of technologies were definitely, created for this type of home growing. And, it is hard to find seeds, but like I said, for folks listening everywhere, abroad and in Philadelphia, True Love Seeds, you can order online, and they have a great selection of heirloom, indigenous and non-GMO organic seeds. And that is...
And we need to, also, we find out those, I think that there's like a lot of exploration into seed development and agri-tech. Well, I know definitely there's a lot of agri-tech development that's happening at HBCUs. You mentioned like Cheney last week, and I know like a lot of the 1890 land grant universities that are HBCUs, like Tennessee State University, Florida A&M, North Carolina A&T, University of Maryland Eastern Shore. These are HBCUs, and they're doing this work. They're doing a lot of that, and so I think we need to start having another conversation, and I'm in touch with those institutions. We need to bring them on and start having a discussion, like getting like those grassroots urban farmers like yourself, folks like Torpedo Pot and the Black business community that wants to scale up on this, and the HB bringing all these folks in the same room and talking and saying, okay, well, how can we build up on this? How can we make this like a real big sector? Let me go to Patrick out of New Jersey, Janine, real quick. Who's calling in for a Farming While Black discussion. Patrick?
Hey, how you doing, Charles?
How you doing? All right.
Good. So, speaking about this, I opened my first medical marijuana dispensary in 2004. So I know hydroponics really well. And, for somebody who's like a new grower, hydroponics is really not that easy. But I can say that, in the sense of how I see Philadelphia, there should be urban gardens everywhere. There should literally be, the MOVE organization was so ahead of their time by creating gardens right in the space that they had outside of their house
Yeah.
To be able to feed yourself with stuff that you grow yourself, because literally, I mean, there's no better, like, you know how they talk about how a fish tank is therapeutic? Well, it's not nearly as good as growing food for yourself, or growing herbs for yourself. So it's a really spiritual experience. And I wanted to say that she was mentioning how do you renutriate soil. The number one plant that can bring oxygen back to soil and minerals, it goes the furthest in the root structure of any plant, goes nearly 12 feet down and oxygenates and remineralizes the soil. And they used to grow hemp in fields where they grow food every 1 or 2 years just so they can reoxygenate the soil. So we really need to look at an expansive hemp program to reoxygenate soil, such as stuff in Colorado and areas like that. So I just wanted to get her thoughts on that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Janine.
Oh, yes. We can talk about this all day. Patrick, I would love for you to also email me, too, because we will be having a cannabis segment on green-collar jobs and the cannabis industry. But as per your, and that's EcoWord@wordradio.com. But talking about hemp, it actually used to be mandatory for farmers to grow a certain amount of hemp depending on your acreage. And it was for this specific reason. One, because it can be used for all different types of things. There's hempcrete that can be like concrete. It's actually stronger. There's clothes. There's plastics you can make out of it. I mean, it's a very versatile plant. But, yes, for sure, like you said, I mean, you explained it. I can't really say it better than you did. Their root system is very diverse, and it goes very deep into the ground. And then also, once you chop that crop down, and let it compost over your soil that you're going to grow in for the next season, it infuses so many different nutrients, a lot of minerals, and a lot of just like healing properties because of the plant that it is.
Yeah. No, thanks so much, Patrick, for calling in. I've got to let you go now, Janine, because we're running up on the end of the hour. This is just always got a lot of, once again, great response on this conversation. So it feels like we gotta head into possibly a part 3 of it next week. Have some more discussion around it and trying to help people visualize what this looks like, what farming while black looks like, and what like a real big ambitious vision of a self-sufficient, sustainable, black community powered farming sector, food sovereign space looks like. So I really appreciate your input on this and your work on it, and appreciate our subject matter experts and guests in the previous segment. I appreciate everyone else who has also been joining in and listening in and calling in. Also, John Holland on our Facebook live stream, solar and wind energy farm, Joshua Tree National Park. I love that place. So thanks, John, for tuning in, and definitely, I'm sure Janine appreciates those words, those kind of words as well. Appreciates the sentiment. Hey, Janine, thanks so much. Be safe out there.
Yeah, thank you. I actually literally have to set up my solar panels right now as we speak.
There you go.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks so much, Charles, and let's keep this conversation going. And shout out to Leah Pennyman for the book Farming While Black that sparked this conversation.
Excellent, excellent. No, we appreciate that and appreciate you living off the land. So that's what's up. We're going to go ahead and take a break. We're going to exit our EcoWord Farming While Black discussion. And then when we come back on the other side in the 12 o'clock hour, we got Krishan Wright, who is the co-founder of Women Tech Makers of North Jersey. We're going to continue that discussion on what's taking place with the Facebook ad boycott. And so other happenings in the digital space. Krishan Wright going to join us next here on Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Tune in Saturdays from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. to hear Empire Capital and Consulting founder Mark Palmer's show titled Black Money, Black Power. This show centers around black money and how black power is derived from money. Tune in every Saturday from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Black Money, Black Power, hosted by Mark Palmer.
Keystone First VIP Choice HMO SNP Dual Eligible Special Needs Plan has a 4 out of 5 star rating and is one of the highest rated Medicare plans in the region. Keystone First VIP Choice and you are better together. If you live in Philadelphia, Bucks, Chester, Montgomery, or Delaware County, and you have both Medicare and Medicaid, choose the Medicare plan that is working to help you get better care. Enjoy extra benefits at no cost to you with Keystone First VIP Choice. You get benefits like dental, vision, and transportation to and from your medical appointments. They also cover a fitness membership to a gym of your choice. $150 toward over-the-counter pharmacy items. There's no copay for doctor's visits. They offer a large provider network, a great prescription plan, dental coverage, and even eyeglasses. Plus, you don't have to wait for open enrollment. You can change your coverage every quarter. Keystone First VIP Choice. The name you trust, the service you deserve. Call Keystone First VIP Choice today at 1-877-686-1760 or visit KeystoneFirstVIPChoice.com. This is Word Radio.
96.1 FM.
And 900 AM WURD Philadelphia.
Black Talk Media.
Reality Check
with Charles Ellison.
Right now on Word Radio
and WordRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WordRadio.com. Also, Word TV, Word app as well. I'm Charles Ellison. Go to @EllisonReport on Twitter.com, hashtag Reality Check. And thanks for joining in on our Farming While Black discussion, our eco-word discussion that happened in the last hour. So we might bring that back next week by popular demand, pretty much based on the listener feedback and response. So we might do a part 3 of that next week. So we'll see. We'll see. Depends on what sort of expertise and conversation, new conversation, fresh conversation we can get with that. Krishan Wright now joins us. She's a certified digital marketing expert, also co-founder of Women Tech Makers of North Jersey. She also founded the group Blacksit US. It's a resource guide for Black Americans who are interested in leaving the United States for a life abroad. So go to @WTM North Jersey for more on that. Krishan here to talk with us about the latest digital developments. More specifically, this Facebook ad boycott keeps blowing up, and there's more about it in the news. Krishan, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Charles. How are you?
All right, good. You can also find you on social media at Krishan Wright on Twitter and also Instagram. So real quick, I'm real fascinated, Krishan, if I know this is kind of going a little off topic than what we were scheduled or expected to talk about. Blacksit US, talk about that. What is that exactly?
Sure. So Blacksit US is now rebranded to Blacksit Global, is an opportunity to encourage, educate, inspire, and empower Black and brown people to look towards moving abroad. In the U.S., we have a lot of struggles and a long history here, and we're seeing it play out with people that are feeling frustrated, whether it's from police brutality, discrimination, systemic racism. We're finding that there are a lot of brothers and sisters that are changing the game and finding opportunities that they thought they could only dream about in the U.S., but they're actually living out those dreams abroad.
This is kind of, it's like there is like that big movement happening, like, for example, with the government of Ghana making its offer right? And I'm assuming that you're kind of a part of that conversation, or maybe you are interfacing with the government of Ghana of making like dual citizenship, for example. I believe that that's something that's in the works, or is an actual reality for Black Americans, for African Americans here. So we're hearing a lot of this, like a 21st century spin on like the Black Star movement, like Marcus Garvey's Black Star movement, and that's becoming more and more real with in recent years.
Yes, this Blackfoot is really becoming, our generation's great migration.
Yeah.
That was where my mother came up from the South, up north for opportunities. And so now you're seeing, Black travel. So more people are taking opportunities, pre-COVID, of course, to go abroad, and they're seeing it. I mean, that happened for me. I went 3 years ago for the first time to New Zealand, and I talk about it on my upcoming podcast, Blackfoot Global, where that was the first time I had actually felt like a human being and seen and judged as a person versus the color of my skin. And that's in a land where Black people don't really make up a percentage of the total population there. So, for me, I'm making my Blackfoot in 2023, and Blackfoot Global was really born out of feelings of fear and anxiety after the deaths of Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd, and feeling helpless and hopeless, and knowing that my exit was still 3 years out. And I wanted to do this platform and build it, but I didn't think I could launch it in the climate that there exists in America today. And I think the pandemic, because it has stripped away so many coping skills that we've had to deal with, existence in life, whether it's going to the gym or retail therapy or whatever. It's made us more vulnerable, but I think it also brings our mortality into perspective. And so I had to just step out on faith and say, look, am I going to die playing it safe, or do I put these ideas out there? And what has happened is there have been people from all around the world participating, growing the group, and that really extended into now the podcast. So I'm really excited about the growth of Blackfoot Global.
I didn't expect to talk with you about this, but it is fascinating. Definitely getting to the next topic, but got a question or two more for you here. So thanks so much for being kind enough to sort of entertain us with this discussion. But it's a real interesting, fascinating discussion, and it's needed. Do people have this conversation with you, other Black people, where they're saying, well, you know what, I put so much, I could assume maybe even like older Black folks who think, I put so much blood and sweat into where I am now. Why would I think of moving to other places, to other countries, to places where I don't have any personal, emotional, or spiritual connection to? I didn't make that kind of investment. I want to get a return on my investment here in the United States. Do you ever have that discussion?
Absolutely. And I always respect where people are in their journey. It's not saying that everybody has to have a Blackfoot in mind. It's just understanding that, if you try to quantify all of what we have contributed to this country as a people, you can't. And that's why we struggle with paying reparations and leveling the playing field. We saw it today. Thankfully, yesterday, Asheville, North Carolina, took the bold step to start to examine and repair its participation in slavery. But we haven't seen that on a federal level. And I don't know if we'll even see it within our lifetime. So for me, the way I kind of approach those questions is, look, at the end of the day, we are a people, those of us that are descendants of people that were enslaved, stolen people making a life on stolen land. And so I don't understand how anyone can rectify that, but I can understand the position for sure.
Yeah. We had there's actually a listener, someone who's watching us on Facebook, on our Facebook live stream, which we'll talk about Facebook in a moment here. But Raphael Suleiman is saying, It's an interesting point. African cultures are very different than American cultural norms. Black Americans are very American people. Just be prepared if you go to live abroad in Africa. Liberia, for example, was a country that was designed for emancipated slaves a long time ago by the USA. Yeah, speak to that. That's a very interesting point Raphael's making.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we have to understand is that colonization occurred across the board, right? There were almost no countries that did not participate in some way, shape, or form in the transatlantic slave trade or benefited from it. And so we know that the effects of that system also has impacts within countries on the continent of Africa. But just like the way I would answer it is just as some people choose to live in different states of the U.S. for whatever reason, whether it's opportunity, employment, predominant black culture, what have you, I think the same thing holds true. One of the things that I've been most challenged as I look at, my own miseducation is that what we've been told about opportunities in Africa in particular and how it plays out for some of us has been very different. So I think you need to go and challenge it. You might go to Ghana and have the best time, and you might have a negative experience going to South Africa, but the same thing could happen in the U.S. I can relocate to West Virginia. Not that I would want to, but no offense to those that live in West Virginia. But it's just to illustrate that it's not a one size fits all. You really have to go in mind with what you want, and that's what I really encourage within the group is, and I have a guide to that is identify what it is that you want out of that experience. It starts with you, and then preparing your mindset for that shift. It could be looking at everything from how to prepare your family, your finances, and then also just, what cultural things that you might need out of that new environment. Because if you're just changing and leaving the U.S. to go somewhere else, that's just geography, right? The commonality and the endpoint is you. So what is it that you need, not just because other people are leaving? And then also I would say is, a lot of people are not leaving the U.S. to choose to relocate and repatriate in the continent of Africa. They're going to places like Denmark, Hong Kong, India, Costa Rica. We have the whole world to choose from. And our culture has permeated so many different countries. Last year I was in Greece for a hip-hop festival, and I was on the island of Santorini, and hip-hop was just playing out of every bar, every street, and I was taken aback. That was my first time in the country, so I think when you step outside the U.S.'s borders, you will be surprised by some of the receptions, and not to say that they're all going to be positive, but I think it's incumbent upon people to take a look for themselves and challenge their own beliefs.
Yeah, no, I think that's very important. I think one place to start is food. Especially if you're preparing to go to places abroad, and you're, is to open up that palate. Especially you're visiting other places in the African diaspora or the Black diaspora, whether that's in the Caribbean or Africa. Like you're gonna have to open yourself up to the food because I've been to those places and with other folks from my community, and they're not having a great experience with the food because they just, it's hard for them to open it. Like, where the McDonald's at? I'm like, you in a different place. Like, last thing you need to be asking about is the McDonald's and Pizza Hut, and it's disrespectful, when you're not eating like the food that people are like breaking their backs to serve you, and they're sharing that experience and that culture with you. And so the best way to kind of start with that experience is food. Resources, obviously, that's a question that always comes up because a lot of black folks don't have the money or the finances to make those kinds of big moves, even if they want to. So I know that's another conversation I'm sure that you probably have, and just people trying to find ways to make that happen. And I guess there's an urgency around that for sure. That's an understatement these days. So it sounds like we're going to have to bring you back, Rashawn, to talk about just that. I did Thank you for this. It was very fascinating.
Thank you.
I did want to get on a discussion about, because it's another important topic. Why is this Facebook ad boycott so significant? Because it's just a social media platform, but this is a big deal. The social media platform continues to lose billions of dollars by the week because of this boycott. And so why such a big, fantastic deal out of this? Why are these companies pulling out? And where do you see this headed?
I think, so to start off, the boycott was really spurred into action by the Stop Hate for Profit campaign. And the NAACP and the Anti-Defamation League are major organizers of this, and they have a rolling list of companies that have decided, whether it be for the month of July or in the case of Unilever for the remainder of the year, taking those ad dollars and not investing them in the platform. There has been some challenges that are well documented with Facebook letting hate speech run rampant on its platforms. And then the idea, or not even just the idea, manipulation of the platform. We saw that in 2016 with the Cambridge Analytica scandal. So in terms of brands and companies, they think of the safety of their brand, and they certainly don't want to even have the idea or notion that they're supporting an environment, a toxic environment for that to fester. And so following this new attention to Black and brown people and the systemic racism that we encounter and face every day, where are environments where these things are bubbling up? And so Facebook has been challenged in really coming up with actionable ways to combat it on its platforms. Just earlier today, they decided that they're going to start tagging information on their platform related to voting to start to address issues related to voter suppression. But they have a real problem on their hands. Facebook is no longer just to your point, a social media platform. It has moved so far past its early days where college students and family and friends connected. It is now a media behemoth. We see that with shows like Red Table Talk, right? So it is now a media platform as much as it is a social media platform. So these brands that are divesting, if you will, from the platform, that it's powerful. No one wants to be on the naughty list, but I think what Facebook is doing in response to that is they're doubling down on providing incentives to small to medium-sized businesses to invest on the platform. I know I've gotten many tags on the platform to give me ad credits. So I'm not sure. We'll have to see.
Yeah, jury's still out on that. What's Black? I'm real curious too. I don't know if you know this offhand. What's Black usership on Facebook like? What percentage of the Facebook population do Black users constitute?
Across, I don't know offhand Facebook specifically, but I would say across social media as a whole, Black people and our media consumption over-indexes that of the general population. And we see that play out, not to digress too much, but, Black Twitter, right? It was born out, it's like, where is Black Twitter? It's like you will say something out of pocket and you will find out where Black Twitter exists. So I think, within these media platforms, Black people have found community, and we over-index on these platforms. And these advertisers know that. And so I think it is a well coordinated response to combat what's going on the platform, because we don't want that running amok. But Facebook is going to have to take a long, hard look and come back with tangible and actionable ways to deal with that. I mean, you look at their workforce. A few weeks ago, there was a virtual boycott from their employees because they thought that Facebook was still being too neutral in response to hate speech and, propaganda from the current administration. And so they did a virtual boycott. But I don't think there has been enough done to really make systemic change.
Yeah, yeah. Well, here's a couple questions. First, do policymakers, concerned about Facebook, do civil rights advocates, activists who are putting pressure on Facebook, do they really truly understand the technology? Like, I know the policymakers, and this is someone who's worked for policymakers, state, local, federal, because of generational issues. It's just older people running these legislatures. They're just not having a grasp of really highly complex digital and technology issues, the 21st century world. I mean, do they really understand what's happening with Facebook, how it operates, what exactly is going on here? I mean, I wonder about that, and I wonder, the sort of intellectual depth that at which these various policymakers and advocates who are raising alarms have about this issue.
My early years was spent in government. I spent 10 years in the New York State Legislature, and I agree where the competency level is disparate. So when you look at government is more reactive than proactive, and a lot of them are challenged with understanding the platform. A lot of, from the lawmakers that, I've either observed or worked for, the social media was always seen as a fad or an afterthought. It's something that their granddaughter or intern, minds their page for them. And so the understanding of the technology, how the algorithms work, how media consumption is just something that they're not spending a lot of time trying to learn. That said, when you don't have an idea or a handle on the issue, it's very difficult to try to legislate appropriately and effectively. And so that is where I think lawmakers are challenged, because to attract someone who actually does understand it, whether it be a digital scientist or analyst, these people make six figures. They're not going to sacrifice a career to then work in public policy, unfortunately. So I think there has to be a reexamination of how to best educate and empower lawmakers to really think about how to increase their digital competency before they try to regulate or legislate social media platforms.
No, I've always wondered about that. Why aren't people just deleting their Facebook pages, Krishan? Why not do that? I think then Zuckerberg will get it.
I think because, we're in the U.S., right, and Facebook is in a lot of countries. So I don't know if that alone would be enough, because you see there's different degrees. So for the youth, as soon as, and it's as a digital marketer, you always know, it's like if kids are on a platform, just like TikTok, for example, but once their parents and grandparents start getting on it, it's like, okay, what's the next thing? Same thing we saw with Snapchat, right? So Facebook, we saw, if you look by the numbers, the majority of people that are on Facebook and Instagram kind of fall in between the mid-30s to 45-plus range. You're not really seeing, a lot of young people on the platform. So there are people that are taking a step back and deleting their pages and moving to platforms that are taking more bold steps, like Twitter. We see Jack Dorsey has been, really leading the charge, whether it be investing in Black and brown communities, taking a bolder stance and addressing, hate speech on the platform. And so they're finding it as a safer alternative to Facebook.
No, it's real important. So, it's such a complicated issue, and but there's just there's so many different angles and so many aspects and corners to it. So, definitely, Krishan, it's been fascinating. I really appreciate your time this midday, this afternoon. Now we'll be talking with Krishan Wright. Krishan Wright is the co-founder of Women Tech Makers of North Jersey. You also heard now she's also founder of Blacksit Global, because we just had an impromptu discussion about Blacksit Global. Go to blacksitglobal.com. Is that correct, Krishan?
Yes.
blacksigglobal.com for more information. So I see we got some interest there from a few folks on the Facebook live stream. And I'm sure we're going to have you back, Krishan, to talk about that issue and more. So really appreciate your time. Good meeting you.
Good meeting you as well, Charles. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care. We'll have you back. All right. Let's take a break. And when we come back on the other side, we'll be talking with Ariella Gross about becoming free, becoming black. Race, freedom, and law in Cuba, Virginia, and Louisiana. Going to talk about the history of freedom in the Americas, particularly the freedom as it relates to black communities, being free and being black. So it should be a fascinating discussion. It's a fascinating book, actually. So we're talking about her book that she co-authored. It should be coming up next here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WordRadio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
If you want to start your morning with mindfulness, motivation, and inspiration, tune in to Daybreak with me, Helana, here on WURD Radio, Monday through Friday from 6 to 7 a.m. I'm a health and wellness coach with over 15 years experience helping people to transform their lives. On the show, we talk health and wellness 360, from getting your mind right to getting your money right. So let's rise and shine together right here on WURDradio.com, 96.1 FM, 900 on your AM dial on Daybreak every morning.
I ain't no better than you, and you ain't no better than me. But we all have something in common. We all are species, seeds of God's creation.
Tune in to Messages in the Music every Friday night with Joey T, midnight to 6 a.m. right here on WURD.
No fear, just facts. WURD.
Warning. If you're drowning in debt you can't afford, do not let the credit card companies trick you into thinking that you have to pay it all back, because you don't. What the credit card companies don't want you to know is that there's actually a way to get debt-free without paying off your entire debt or going bankrupt. If you have $10,000 or more in credit card debt, you have the right to let us settle that debt for a fraction of what you owe. For free information, call Credit Associates now. 1-800-965-5269. We'll even show you how much money you could save. If you can't afford to pay off all your debt, do not let the credit card companies trick you into thinking that you have to. Call Credit Associates for free information on how to get debt-free faster than you ever thought possible, without debt consolidation or bankruptcy. We depend on your success and offer a guarantee, so there's no risk to call. For free information, call now. 1-800-965-5269. That's 1-800-965-5269. 1-800-965-5269.
Reality Check
with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio
and WordRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM. Also beyond Greater Philly, beyond Delaware Valley, it is WordRadio.com for the live stream. Also Word TV, Word app on your smartphone or digital device. So you can go to @EllisonReport on Twitter.com. And also hashtag Reality Check for more of that digital discourse and conversation. We do that on Twitter, and appreciate folks who are watching us through our live stream on Facebook Live and also on YouTube, youtube.com/onWord as well. We appreciate that. Joining us now is Ariella Gross. She is the co-author of a really interesting, intriguing read. It's entitled Becoming Free, Becoming Black. Race, Freedom, and Law in Cuba, Virginia, and Louisiana. So that came out this year. Here's the book, actually. I got my copy. And it's a very intriguing look at the history of not just freedom, but the laws that created freedom and the laws defining blackness in the Americas, and using those three places as case studies, as historic case studies or leading examples of that fight that's been happening, that's been unfolding over the past several hundred years. And we have Ariella Gross on joining us to talk a little bit more about this book. Ariella, how are you doing? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
All right, excellent. No, thanks for writing this too. Really fascinating take here on, becoming free and becoming black. So why did you pick these three places, first of all, in the Americas? Cuba, Virginia, where my mother's family is from, hails from Virginia, and it was part of that migration out of the South, out of Virginia, into the North, and places like Philly. And what makes them so unique to provide a comparative analysis for this particular exercise for this book?
Absolutely. So we were really interested in the question of how race is created through the law, how the legal frameworks, created the categories of blackness and whiteness. And so we were interested in looking at three places that started from colonies of the different empires, right? Cuba was part of the Spanish Empire, Virginia was part of the British Empire, Louisiana. It's actually kind of interesting. It starts out French, it becomes Spanish, then it becomes part of the U.S. And so we could look at both, all right, different legal traditions. You're going back to the very beginning of the enslavement of Africans and the beginning of the slave trade. How did these different colonies set up racial regimes in the law? But then what was really fascinating to us is how much of that ongoing story, which, as you say, goes on for centuries, is really shaped also by enslaved and free people of color who look for openings in the legal systems to seize freedom and to kind of push on whatever possibilities there are to gain freedom for themselves and their families. And we end up, as you mentioned, it's the title is Becoming Free, Becoming Black. And I think the kind of irony we discovered is we initially set out to write, a comparative history of the law of slavery.
Yeah.
But we ended up realizing that if we really wanted to understand the different law, like how race came about, how was it that blackness became this degraded category in the Americas, in the legal systems, it was actually this process of becoming free and then the regulation of free black people that creates that category, because that's where you're drawing the line between black and white, is for people who are all free, but only some people eligible for full citizenship and full rights.
How did that, it's very fascinating how that played out. So, like, on one hand, you have the law creating slavery and creating the notion that that black people inherently were not free, but it is rather like there's a contradiction there. It's obviously it's troubling in terms of the historical context, in terms of how like black humanity ripped away by the law, by these laws from these different empires. But just the how funny things play out, where like the black people, the enslaved black people themselves saying, well, I mean, when did they come to this determination in your research? When did enslaved black peoples in those places come to the determination that, hey, this is the law that is oppressing us, but this could also be the law that is the key to our freedom. And it's sort of changing the whole notion of even how they themselves perceived their own freedom, or what their freedom would look like.
Right, and from the very beginning. I mean, what's so remarkable, so take a place like Virginia, and as you know, there's been a lot of attention in the last year since the New York Times 1619 Project to that year when the first Africans arrived in bondage in Virginia. And 17th century Virginia was actually a place where they had very little precedent in the law for slavery. So a lot of key questions about what enslavement would mean weren't worked out in the law yet at all. Like, for example, does the condition of slavery pass with the mother or the father? Most systems of slavery had already determined, right, passes through the mother. But in Virginia, there were enslaved black people successfully suing for freedom based on a white father in the 17th century, and that hadn't been settled yet in the law. Or claiming, I'm Christian, I was baptized Christian, and therefore I should be free because all Christians should be free. That the Spanish Empire had settled that, 100 years before. Oh, you can be as devout as you want. That's not going to gain your freedom. But in Virginia, it wasn't set yet. So although there's no doubt to me that, this is a little bit, historians argue about this. There's no doubt, I think, that the people who brought them over on ships had purchased them from traders, intended to enslave them. But there was still enough room in the law for enslaved people to take advantage of that and make these claims. So they're doing it from the first minute they arrive on American soil.
You know what I find fascinating about that is that there's always this notion, right? Because of white supremacy or white supremacist illogic, that enslaved black peoples did not have that kind of intellectual capacity, and here they are maneuvering the law, using law created by the folks enslaving them against the folks enslaving them, right? It was a very clever move. On one hand, it's saying, hey, we're going to use your laws, these laws that you've created. You're thinking that your laws in their totality have been created to do nothing but just oppress us in perpetuity. But we've found these openings. We've actually, found like we've broken the code in these laws. So that's one. And two, we're going to completely blow up this hypocrisy in your face, to show you just how hypocritical, how inhumane you are. You're thinking that you're so civilized because you created these laws, but you're not. So I find that both fascinating and in some small ways. I guess it was some small comfort. Obviously, it could only go but so far. But it's just like you said, from the moment they hit those shores, they saw the law as something that could be leveraged in a much more different and potentially advantageous way.
Yeah, there's I'm sure the famous line from Audre Lorde's speech, you can't dismantle the master's house with the master's tools. And clearly, the legal system is the master's tools. And I would agree that they didn't dismantle it all at once. And yet I do think that if you kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture of what Vincent Brown calls the long war against slavery, it was a war that was fought by enslaved people over a long time through, rebellions and resistance, violent means, but also through these legal actions that created communities of free people of color who were a resource for other enslaved people, and also a real challenge to this ideology you're talking about, the white supremacist ideology that said black people are only fit for enslavement, white people are the only ones fit for citizenship. It's hard to sustain that black and white line when you have this growing community of people in between that do not fit. And what's interesting in the comparison with Cuba is that you see in the 19th century in the U.S., as it becomes a republic, as it develops democracy, voting rights for white men, all of these things that we associate, right, very positive, freedom, equality, free men of color in particular are really threatening to that because they're eligible potentially for citizenship. And so in Virginia and then in Louisiana, the reaction to as white men are getting more and more democracy is we have to get rid of these free people of color. This is a real threat. If, we need to send them back to Africa. We need to get rid of them because we cannot live with them as citizens. And that doesn't happen in Cuba, which is still part of the old regime, Spanish Empire, where, everybody's a subject of the king with different levels of status, but everybody has their place. It's not the same kind of threat. And so it's ironically, because we're a republic, because we're developing all these rights for white men, that whiteness and citizenship get tied together, and there's no place for free people of color.
We're talking with, if you've been tuning in, we're talking with Ariella Gross. She is also, she's a writer, she's a historian, professor of history at the University of Southern California, at the law school, at the Gould Law School, correct? At the University of Southern California, USC. Right, and she's the co-author of a book, Becoming Free, Becoming Black. It's a very interesting read. She did this in conjunction with our colleague Alejandro de la Fuente, and it's Becoming Free, Becoming Black, Race, Freedom, and Law in Cuba, Virginia, and Louisiana. So I like this book because, my family's from Virginia, and so there's so much rich history that's there in Virginia. Cambridge University Press made this available. Go to Ariella Gross, AriellaGross.com for more information on her, too. One last question here, Ariella. How's this all playing out today? Because like you mentioned Cuba, right? So race, freedom, or, the scope of freedom has obviously been shaped and reshaped countless times over this period since the 17th century in Virginia, right, when we were talking about that. How's all this playing out in your mind? How's this all playing out today in those same three places?
Sure. I mean, Cuba has a complicated history in terms of when it became independent and the communist revolution. I can't, cover all of that. But what I would say is what was possible in Cuba on the eve of emancipation was for a free black person to become a citizen, and they played key roles in the independence movement that eventually made Cuba independent of the Spanish Empire. In the United States, if you look at what happens after Reconstruction and the consolidation of Jim Crow in reaction to this brief moment of Reconstruction, the template for all of those Jim Crow laws is the laws regulating free people of color. It's really not a continuation of slavery. It's a continuation of the way free people of color were excluded from public life, were excluded from citizenship, and even restrictions on their movements and efforts to, remove them. All of that we see playing out in immigration law and deportation. The first template for racist immigration laws are the laws about free people of color. So unfortunately, I think we see too many echoes of that today, right? That I think is what the legacy we're still dealing with.
We're still exactly. So, and then just that legacy continues. Ariella Gross, historian, also professor at University of Southern California Law School and co-author of Becoming Free, Becoming Black, Race, Freedom, and Law in Cuba, Virginia, and Louisiana. So check it out when you get a chance. Cambridge University Press, AriellaGross.com or at Ariella Gross for more on social media. She's engaged there. Professor, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. Thanks for this work. Too, as well. So my 15-year-old picked it up actually and started getting into it. Awesome. So she helped me with a few of the notes. She saw. She's like, "Oh, this is good. I like this." Yeah. So she went through it. So so you got some fans, but appreciate the work.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
All right. Thanks for being on. You too. Be safe. All right. Let's take a break. And when we come back on the other side, phone lines are open, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900, 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
We will not resume our regular programming when things die down. We're not black to help our bottom line or because it's politically correct. We're not joining a fight. This has been our fight, our message, our people. Black lives have always mattered here. We are
Undeniably,
indefatigably, unapologetically, permanently Black Talk Media.
WURD.
Listen to Laborers Live.
We created the weekend. We created the 40-hour work week. We just want enough to feed our family, be able to send our children to college, and let our next generation do better than we did.
To people that might have forgot how important unionism is in a country like the United States. People now infringing on our 8-hour workday, trying to work people more than 8 hours without overtime, trying to work people without benefits. In the long run, everybody's getting a fat paycheck except the worker. So this is really a wake-up call for America.
The struggle is continuous. Tune in to Laborers Live every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. Sponsored by LESIT, the Laborers Employers Cooperation Education Trust of the Laborers District Council of Philadelphia and vicinity.
Local 332, Sam Staten Jr. Business Manager. Local 57, Esteban Vera Business Manager. Local 135, Dan Woodall Jr. Business Manager. Local 413, James Harper Jr. Business Manager. The Laborers District Council, Ryan Boyer Business Manager, and Tony Staten, Executive Director of LESIT.
Support independent black media and join the 4WORD movement now at 215-425-7875
or visit wordradio.com.
Emerge is a public service announcement campaign produced by Mural Arts Philadelphia and sponsored by the City of Philadelphia to inspire our community to emerge resilient and hopeful in the face of COVID-19 and systemic racism.
Fighting for our lives in the midst of a pandemic, limited access to tests so just the best get it, a compounded sentence with pre-existing conditions, we wear the mask and still take the fall with no forgiveness. But we will emerge illuminated, consumed, elated, panacea unearthed when we concede the seeds of hatred, tune out the frequency of rote memory, forsake complacence, fall in love with freedom like it was meant to be, I'm saying. Raise up our voices to penetrate the acreage, no longer complacent. We must emerge and awaken.
To learn more, go to muralarts.org/emerge. How will you emerge?
Reality Check
with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio
and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back. 215-634-8065, toll free. It is 866-361-0900. Phone lines are open. 215-634-8065, toll free. It is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Phone lines are open. Appreciate folks who are listening in from places near, places dear, and some places far off as well. Good morning, now good afternoon to you, Shirley Carter, who's watching us on our Word TV stream on Facebook Live. So Shirley J. Carter, thanks for good afternoon to you now. Deidre Hicks, please repeat the guest name and farm. You might have been asking about Daryl Addison of Torpedo Pot. So go to torpedopot.com for more information, or it could have been Janine Kayembe, who's a black farmer. Janine Kayembe is the project manager for EcoWord, our EcoWord Environmental Justice Journalism series, ecoword.com for more there. And she is EcoWord at wordradio.com if you'd like to get in touch with her and learn more information about what she's into. Shalada Sankofa, good morning, good afternoon to you. So no apologies at all. She had a little finger slip, little texting or typing snafu while she was on the train. So just be safe while you're on the train, sister. So, but appreciate you listening in, and you also giving us a shout out on our Facebook Live comments section. And Raphael Suleiman, also always appreciate the insights and always dropping a little science on the Facebook Live stream. So, just kind of giving us some context about Africa and traveling abroad and just being aware of those cultures, particularly when we've got a culture here in these United States, for better or for worse. And so, you just have to be aware when you're going to these other places abroad. But very good point, Raphael. You're absolutely right. Hip hop music is everywhere. It's everywhere. It's a vast. Don't just listen to hip hop on like those top 40 beats that you get on those stations where they play like the same music over and over again. There's just a whole wealth, a treasure trove of hip hop in so many different places, like original hip hop, original sounds, just great stuff. Sometimes you hear it and you're like, wow, what is that? Is that hip hop? And sometimes it'll have different languages laced over it, and that's hip hop. But to Raphael's point, hip hop music is everywhere. You'll hear the music everywhere on the globe. And so I think he was talking about Krishan Wright's reflection, her observation when she went to Greece, and then there was a hip hop festival going there, and she was surprised, she was shocked. But Raphael, he's right. We needn't be surprised. Hip hop is alive and very well and very vibrant in a number of places, in every place across the planet, and especially hip hop being evolving from African or Black diaspora musics. So, you hear it laced in all kinds of music everywhere. So, food and music. That's the way, you just get turned on to so many other different cultures. Once you have an appreciation for the food and an appreciation for the music, other people's music, you can't go wrong from there. It's the perfect formula. Even if you don't understand the language. So, that's fine if you don't understand the language. That's all right. Just the food, the music, the film, the food, music, film. Don't forget the film. That's why Netflix is so important these days as well, and doing a lot of important stuff, especially with a lot of the international shows and movies. There's a lot of, like, for example, West African, and not just West African, but like we saw this film, I think it was about a couple of weeks ago, from Zimbabwe. It was a great film. It was like a romantic comedy, and it was great. And and after a while, I was like, was this made in Nigeria? In Zimbabwe? And I know Zimbabwe, there's some rough living there, but they pulled it off. It was actually a cute film. It was a film, I forget the name of it. It was about a woman. It was a sister. She signed up for this big national cooking competition. It was like a reality show cooking competition. I got to get the name of that, but it was on Netflix, and it was from Zimbabwe. It's a Zimbabwean directed, and so it gives you these glimpses into those cultures. So food, food, music, and film. Like, watch, especially once we get through this pandemic and you're going to want to start traveling abroad, get studied up, get geared up on the food, and those are places you can buy this food, or you can make the food yourself with the proper ingredients, the food, the music, and the film. So just perfect ingredients. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. So also go to the benote.com, for the latest Trendency poll and latest Trendency research poll. Our good friends at Trendency Research, who also gave us at the top of this year, at the top of 2020, before the pandemic hit, the first major national black voter poll by a black media outlet. So that was WRD did that. Trendency Lincoln Park Strategies provided that for us. But their latest poll showing some troubling signs. So Joe Biden is ahead. Joe Biden is ahead by average about 9 points ahead of Donald Trump. But every poll, or a lot of the polling that you're seeing, you're going to have anywhere from that 3 to 5 percentage points. On average about 3 percentage points margin of error, as they call it. So when you hear like, oh, Joe Biden is ahead by 9 or 10 points, it's really like, like 6, or he's really ahead by 6 or 7 points, right? Because you got to shave off the 3, because there's always going to be that error, because it's not going to be completely like this. The accuracy is not like 100% there, so it's going to be some error. So they give themselves a little bit of wiggle room right there. But Trendency showing a 9-point lead, Biden having a 9-point lead. But there are some troubling signs for Biden as far as the number of what Trendency calls unavailable voters, and so those so about 38% of voters unavailable right now for Biden meaning they'll either vote for Trump, they're going to vote for someone who's going to pop up saying they're the third party, or they're not voting regardless. They're just tapping out of this election. Now, within that 38% unavailable, we have about 16, this is according to Trendancy, there's a trend line that they're saying 16%, 16% of black voters saying that they are not voting, So, and so Biden is showing a decline. He still has a majority of black voters supporting him, but there's a softening of that black support, and it's because of the rise of not voting. And that has increased. Here's the kicker. It's increased threefold from 5% not voting about a few months ago to now 16%, according to Trendancy. That's alarming. So we don't know what's going on there. Now, Trendancy, in their analysis, they suspect that there are some, speaking of social media, there are some major social media efforts afoot to throw black folks off. So, like you're thinking, you're saying, like you're reading messages or you're saying Facebook ads and you think that they're in your interest, they're in your best political interest, and they're not. And so that's what Trendancy is supposing here, that or this is kind of like their hypothesis that there are some rather successful social media efforts. At this point, if you knew what happened in 2016, I don't know how to help you if you are still continually getting bamboozled and punked online on social media. If you cannot see like how you're getting hoodwinked or on social media now, or if you're still allowing yourselves to get, if there are people still out there still allowing themselves to get taken by these kinds of like high stakes games, high stakes messaging games that, I mean, by this time you can pretty much tell who's a troll and who's not. I mean, folks, especially folks who spend a lot of time on social media, you should be able to expertly point out who's gaming you or not. It's just, so I can't, it's, we'll still talk about it and we'll still try to navigate ourselves through it. But we have a real problem there. If that's a very high double-digit percentage of black voters or non-black voters or people tapping out. And all I can say is black folks out there who are saying they're not voting, it's while at the same time you're saying you want to eliminate or you want to fight back against white supremacy, you're being a hypocrite. Not voting, especially at a time like this, is the most white supremacist thing you can do. If you are black and you are not voting, you consider yourself, for the time being, until you make a decision to finally go vote, you are an active agent of the white nationalists. Full stop. I'm not saying, and I'm saying that with a totally serious face. You are being an active agent of white supremacists, white nationalists that are currently looking to reelect Donald Trump, and they're going to take this from bad to worse. It's going to go to DEFCON 4 real quick, wicked quick, like overnight if he gets reelected. So, like if folks are out there thinking, oh, it's already bad, it's done, it's over, I'm not voting. Okay, like be an active agent of the David Dukes out there, because that's what you're doing by not voting. I can't say that anymore. I can't stress that anymore. Like you are falling into that play. You are being played. So like folks, you got a few months to kind of make a decision here to get your head back into the game, get on mission, get registered if you're not, and if you are registered, get out there and vote, and let's do the right thing, and let's at least get through phase one, because this is phase one. It's not the end of it, but it's the very first important step. We have got to get this done in November. It's that high stakes. It's that life and death. Forget about all the previous elections where like people were saying like this is it, this is the one, like this has got to get done. And black voters, we should be proud. We're going to play that real pivotal central role. Yet white voters are going to do what they do, and I understand people are like, well, what about the white voters? I can't worry about them. We got to worry about what we need to do and what we have to do as a black political bloc, and we need to flex. We need to flex that muscle, flex that electoral muscle. We should want to do that. We should want to be in that fight, right? And show people what we made of politically, electorally. So I'm just having trouble wrapping my head around that kind of number. All right, that ends this Reality Check Week, this Thursday edition. We're headed into The Source with Andrea Lawful Sanders. That's coming up next here on WURD. So continue to stay tuned in to the home of Black Talk Media. I'm at Twitter on @EllisonReport on Twitter. Hashtag Reality Check. Can also continue to thank Troy Wilmore. The board is still behind the scenes getting it done, as always, so appreciate that. We will see you next Monday at 10 a.m., God willing. In the meantime, Philly and beyond, I want you to stay sharp, stay smart, but please stay safe out there. Have a wonderful rest of the afternoon, evening, and rest of the weekend as well. We'll see you on Monday, I hope to, and take care.